within few seconds.
Okay. Take me. Give me 1 minute, Dilip.
Hi, sir. Kok.
Take me.
Hi, sir. Hobo ekor problem nai, sir. Hello. Sir, joldi ahok live hobo aru. Live hall, sir. 3 seconds. Okay, so we are live on YouTube. So I'm sharing the YouTube link in the chat box of the paper, our Zoom webinar chat box. If anyone want to invite your colleague friends, they can invite and in our YouTube link. And just if you click on the link, please don't put your volumes up in the YouTube video because it will create an echo problem. We have 11 attendees and more attendees are joining with us. Okay. So this is the third and final session of the 2 days national webinar, Science Fiction in an Age of Crisis. So we have around 17 paper presenters. This is a tight packed session and live on YouTube, as well as we have started recording this event in our cloud-based server. And as I said in the earlier sessions also, you can use the chat box. The YouTube viewers will use the comment box, and the technical team will pass the messages to the Zoom panelists if any question or queries come up. And there is no feedback form for this session because this session is linked with the main event that we broadcast at 11 AM yesterday. And please, paper presenters, the time limit given to the paper presenters is maximum 7 minutes, and this is because of the technical as well as some other general reasons. So please try to maintain the time limit. And I would like to pass now to the convener, sir, to start the proceedings of today's event. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Philip. This is the last and the final session of the webinar on science fiction in an age of crisis. We have been joined by many paper presenters from across the Zoom and Facebook and YouTube Live. In the morning, we had a very nice presentation session, initially inaugurated as a speaker by Dinesh Chandra Goswami sir. We hope that this session will be very lively and fruitful also. I wish all the paper presenters luck. We have a small thing to tell you that in case you have papers that you are getting ready to be published, please ensure that they are actual full-length research papers around 5,000, 6,000 words, whatever is your limit. You can pass on this information to your colleagues who would be interested in in publishing the papers. We'll be bringing out the anthology before the pujas. So before that, you can have this with us, and we can give it to our peer review team, and they can again forward this to us. So we'll have the publication. Best of luck to you, and Dilip, we can begin the session now.
So the first paper presenter is again from Assam. He is basically from North Lakhimpur College. So I'd like to invite Sanjay Acharya, who will be presenting his paper in Assamese. Okay. Sanjay Acharya, I'm sending a request to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Sanjay Acharya. After Sanjay Acharya,
hello.
The paper will be presented by Aditi Sangha. Okay. Hello. Now Sanjay Acharya will present. After that, Aditi Sangha will present.
Hello.
Sanjay Acharya, please submit yourself. We are hearing.
Hello.
Hello, sir. We are hearing. Please submit yourself.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Can you continue?
Okay. Namaskar. নমস্কাৰ মোৰ আজি গৱেষণা পত্ৰৰ বিষয় হৈছিল কল্পবিজ্ঞান গল্প হিচাপে শান্তনু তামুলীৰ পানী এক অধ্যয়ন বিজ্ঞান হৈছে বিশেষভাৱে অৰ্জন কৰা জ্ঞান বিজ্ঞানৰ কোনো এটা বিষয় সকলো পাঠকে সহজে বুজি পোৱাকৈ ৰচনা কৰা এই বিজ্ঞান কৈছিলে বিজ্ঞানৰ তাত্ত্বিক বিষয়বস্তু সৰ্বসাধাৰণ হৈছে বিজ্ঞান সাহিত্য ৰমেশ চন্দ্ৰ গোস্বামীয়ে কৈছিলে এনেদৰে বিজ্ঞান সাহিত্য হৈছে বিজ্ঞান আৰু সাহিত্যৰ এক সুখগ্ৰাহ্য সংমিশ্ৰণ য'ত সাধাৰণতে বিজ্ঞানৰ তত্ত্ব তথ্য আৰু সংবাদক সাহিত্যৰ ৰসত বিধৌতি কৰি প্ৰকাশ কৰা হয় সাধাৰণতে বিজ্ঞান সাহিত্যক দুটা ভাগত ভাগ কৰি আলোচনা কৰা হয় জনপ্ৰিয় বিজ্ঞান সাহিত্য আৰু কল্প বিজ্ঞান সাহিত্য মোৰ যিহেতু আলোচনাৰ বিষয় কল্প বিজ্ঞান সাহিত্য আছিলে গতিকে মই জনপ্ৰিয় বিজ্ঞান সাহিত্য ইয়াত এৰাই চলি কল্প বিজ্ঞান সাহিত্য সম্পৰ্কে আলোচনা কৰিম অসমীয়া ভাষাত আমি কল্প বিজ্ঞান সাহিত্যৰ আৰম্ভণি দেখিবলৈ পাওঁ আবাহন যুগৰ আলোচনীত আবাহন আলোচনীৰ অষ্টম বছৰ সপ্তম সংখ্যাত হৰিপ্ৰসাদ বৰুৱাৰ যি বীৰচতীয়া দেশ গল্প প্ৰকাশ হৈছিল তাকে প্ৰথম অসমীয়া কল্প বিজ্ঞান গল্প বুলি কোৱা হয় ইয়াৰ পাছত নগেন্দ্ৰ নাৰায়ণ চৌধুৰী সৌৰভ কুমাৰ চলিহাকে প্ৰমুখ কৰি বৰ্তমানলৈকে দীনেশ চন্দ্ৰ গোস্বামী ক্ষীৰোদৰ বৰুৱা বন্দিতা ফুকন শান্তনু তামুল ইত্যাদি বিভিন্ন গল্পকাৰে বা সাহিত্যিকে কল্প বিজ্ঞান গল্প উপন্যাস ইত্যাদি ৰচনা কৰি আহি আছে গুৰুত্বপূৰ্ণ বিষয় এইখিনিতে যে অসমীয়া ভাষাত যদিও কল্প বিজ্ঞান গল্প প্ৰথম আবাহন আলোচনীতে প্ৰকাশ হৈছিলে কিন্তু কল্প বিজ্ঞান সম্পৰ্কে গৱেষণামূলক নিবন্ধৰ সংকলন প্ৰকাশ পাইছিল 1995 চনত অসমীয়া বিজ্ঞান কাহিনী নামেৰে আৰু ইয়াৰ পিছৰ পৰা কল্প বিজ্ঞান সম্পৰ্কে গল্প তাত্ত্বিক প্ৰবন্ধ ইত্যাদি সমূহ প্ৰকাশ হৈ গৈ আছে মোৰ আলোচনাৰ লেখক আছিল শান্তনু তামুলীৰ পৰিচয় দিয়াৰ বিশেষ প্ৰয়োজন আছে বুলি নাভাবো যদিও চমুকৈ পৰিচয় দি লৈছো তেওঁ মূলতঃ শিশু আলোচনী মৌচাক আৰু নতুন আৱিষ্কাৰৰ প্ৰতিষ্ঠাপক সম্পাদক আছিল তেওঁ শিশুৰ বাবে বিভিন্ন কাহিনী বিভিন্ন গল্প ৰচনা কৰি আহিছে যদি তেওঁ কল্প বিজ্ঞান গল্প সংকলন আছিলে মায়া মৃগ ঠিক সেইদৰে অনুষ্ঠিত কল্প বিজ্ঞান উপন্যাস মহাকাশৰ তাৰকা গৃহযুদ্ধ ইত্যাদি আমি পাওঁ শান্তনু তামুলে ইতিমধ্যে শিশুৰ মাজত বিজ্ঞান জনপ্ৰিয়কৰণ ৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় পুৰস্কাৰ বঁটা আৰু সাহিত্য একাডেমী বাল সাহিত্য পুৰস্কাৰ বঁটা লাভ কৰিছে বিষয়ে যি পানী গল্প তাৰ ভিতৰলৈ আহিব যত্ন কৰিছো পানী যিটো গল্প মই বাছি লৈছিলো সেই গল্পটো আৰম্ভণি আৰু সামৰণি হৈছিলে মিষ্টাৰ তামুলী আৰু মিষ্টাৰ দিহিঙীয়াৰ কথনৰ মাজেৰে সেই কথোপকথনত মূলতঃ মিষ্টাৰ তামুলী যি জৰিয়তে আমি জানো যে মিষ্টাৰ তামুলী আছিলে এজন ভূতত্ত্ববিদ গৱেষক তেওঁ ভূতত্ত্বৰ যি অভিযান আৰম্ভ কৰিছিল সেই অভিযানৰ সকলোবোৰ তথ্য গৃহ দপ্তৰক প্ৰদান কৰিছিল যদিও তেওঁ যি গাইগাৰ কাউণ্টাৰ লৈ গৈছিল সেই গাইগাৰ কাউণ্টাৰ হিমালয় বুকুৰ পৰা বৈ অহা নদীৰ যি ৰেডিঅ' এক্টিভিটি সেই ৰেডিঅ' এক্টিভিটিৰ কথা উল্লেখ কৰা নাছিল আৰু সেই ৰেডিঅ' এক্টিভিটিৰ লগত জড়িত হৈ আছিল 1950 চনৰ 15 আগষ্টত তিব্বতৰ হিমালয় পাৰ্বত্য অঞ্চলত বোমাৰ বিস্ফোৰণ আৰু অসমৰ মহাপ্ৰলয়ৰ ঘটনা কিন্তু আজি ৰাজনৈতিক
I think Sanjay Acharya is okay. He is again reconnecting. Sanjay Acharya, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, your internet connectivity is very poor. Kindly try to wrap it up within minutes. Apunar internet connection to bohote durbol hoy he karone oti sonkale apuni gutekhini samoribo chesta korok sir.
গুৰুত্ব দিয়া নাছিল আৰু আনকি আনোৱা বিস্ফোৰণৰ জৰিয়তে চীনে যি ব্ৰহ্মপুত্ৰ ইউটাৰ্ণ কৰিব চেষ্টা আৰু সেই হল নে নহল আমি গল্পটো পৰৱৰ্তী পৰ্যায়ত পঢ়িলে আলোচনা কৰিলে জানিম গল্পটো যেতিয়া আমি পানী গল্পটো যদি গল্প হিচাপে আলোচনা কৰিব যাওঁ তেতিয়াহ'লে গল্পটোত থাকিবলগীয়া যি আৰম্ভণি আৰু উৎকণ্ঠা আমি দুয়োটা দেখিবলৈ পাওঁ মিষ্টাৰ দিহিঙীয়া আৰু মিষ্টাৰ তামুলী কথোপকথন
Okay, since he is having a technical issue, so I think convener sir, can we?
No, we can move on to the second presenter. If he has, if he has resorted the problem, we can again ask him to come back.
Yes, yes. Sanjay Acharya, শুনা পাইছে মোক স্যার শুনা পাইছে মোক
হয় হয়
শুনি আছো
সঞ্জয় আচাৰ্য মানে ঘটনাটো হৈছে কি আপোনাৰ বাৰে বাৰে নেটৱৰ্কটো কাটি যায় আছে সেই কাৰণে আমি নেক্সট প্ৰেজেন্টাৰ জনক ইনভাইট কৰিছো বাকি আপোনাৰ লগত আমি বাই ফোন কন্টাক্ট কৰি লম স্যাৰ ধন্যবাদ আমাৰ লগত জয়েন কৰাৰ কাৰণে and I would like to mention please don't leave the room after your presentation since we need to hear to the last presenter also. So I'd like to call Aditi Sangha. She is a research scholar, Department of English, Punjab University. Aditi Sangha, please submit yourself. Madam, I am sending a request to unmute yourself. Aditi Sangha, we are not hearing your voice. Your PPT is visible, but we are not hearing your voice. I think you have a problem with your audio connection, so I will just temporarily stop your PPT. Please try to reconnect your audio. We'll give you another chance. So I'd like to call Pubali Bora. She will present a paper in Assamese again. Pubali Bora, I'm sending a request to unmute yourself. Try to maintain the time limit. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. আজি মোৰ আলোচনা পত্ৰৰ বিষয় হৈছে কল্পবিজ্ঞান গল্পৰ এক আলোচনা দ্বিতীয় তাজমহল গল্পৰ বিষয় আৰু মই দ্বিতীয় তাজমহল গল্পটো অসমীয়া কল্পবিজ্ঞান গল্প হিচাপে আলোচনা কৰাৰ আগতে মই অভিজিত শৰ্মা বৰুৱাৰ আগবাঢ়িছো। অভিজিত শৰ্মাই 1982 চনতে তেওঁ জনমভূমি কাকতৰ 5 মে সংখ্যাত অথম মাধ্যাকৰ্ষণ সংবাদ নামৰ গল্প পক্ষেৰে গল্পকাৰ হিচাপে নিজৰ পৰিচয় দিয়ে আৰু দীৰ্ঘ বিৰতিৰ মূৰত তেওঁ 2005 চনৰ পৰা 2016 চনৰ এপ্ৰিল মাহ পৰ্যন্ত 5টা অনুবাদ গল্প আৰু 80টা তেওঁ নিজৰ গল্পৰ সৰ্বাধিক গল্প ৰচয়িতাৰ অসমীয়া কল্পবিজ্ঞান সাহিত্যত সৰ্বাধিক গল্প ৰচয়িতাৰ যশ অৰ্জন কৰিবলৈ সক্ষম হয়। আৰু এতিয়া যদি আমি জানো যে 20 শতিকাৰ অসমীয়া কল্পবিজ্ঞান সাহিত্যৰ প্ৰতিষ্ঠিত শাখা হিচাপে খ্যাতি অৰ্জন কৰিবলৈ সক্ষম হৈছিল আৰু এই কল্পবিজ্ঞান সাহিত্য বা কল্পবিজ্ঞান গল্পসমূহ সাধাৰণতে সামাজিক পটভূমি এটাত ৰচিত হলেও সেইসমূহৰ বৰ্তমান থাকিব পাৰে বা ভৱিষ্যতেও সেইসমূহ ৰচিত হ'ব পাৰে। এনে পটভূমিতে কল্পবিজ্ঞান গল্পসমূহ ৰচনা কৰা হৈছে আৰু তেনে এটা কল্পবিজ্ঞান গল্প হৈছে অভিজিত শৰ্মা বৰুৱাৰ দ্বিতীয় তাজমহল গল্পটো। আৰু দ্বিতীয় তাজমহল গল্পৰ বিষয়বস্তুলৈ যদি লক্ষ্য কৰো আমি দেখিবলৈ পাওঁ যে নবাৰুণ চলিহা যি তেওঁ পত্নীৰ মৃত্যুৰ 6ষ্ঠ দিনা তেওঁ বন্ধুবৰ্গৰ আগত প্ৰকাশ কৰিছে যে তেওঁ এটা পত্নীৰ স্মৃতিত বিশ্বৰ দ্বিতীয় তাজমহল সাজিব খুজিছে আৰু তাজমহলটো সাজিব খোজোতে তেওঁ বন্ধুবৰ্গৰ আগত এইটো প্ৰকাশ কৰিছে যে তেওঁ তেওঁ প্ৰকাশ কৰে যে একোটা বস্তুত সাধাৰণতে 110 বিধমান মৌলিক পদাৰ্থৰে গঠিত হৈ থাকে আৰু সেই বস্তুটোত থকা অণু পৰমাণু আদিৰ যদি আমি সংখ্যা নিৰ্ধাৰণ কৰিব পাৰো আৰু সেইসমূহ যদি আমি বায়ু পানী মাটি আদিৰ পৰা গ্ৰহণ কৰিব পাৰো তেন্তে সেই একে ধৰণৰ অবিকল বস্তু এটা আমি নিৰ্মাণ কৰাত সফল হ'ব পাৰো। আৰু তেনেদৰে তেওঁ নেনো প্ৰযুক্তি আৰু ত্ৰিমাত্ৰিক কম্পিউটাৰ সহায়ত সেইসমূহ গল্পটোত ব্যাখ্যা কৰিছে আৰু গল্পকাৰে প্ৰথম পুৰুষত নবাৰুণ চলিহাৰ এজন বন্ধু হিচাপে কাহিনীটো আগুৱাই লৈ গৈছে আৰু অসমীয়া কল্পবিজ্ঞান গল্প হিচাপে যদি দ্বিতীয় তাজমহল গল্পটো আলোচনা কৰিবলৈ যাওঁ তেনেহলে প্ৰথমতে আমি দেখিবলৈ পাওঁ প্ৰকৃত বিজ্ঞানখিনিক নিখুঁত ৰূপত উপস্থাপন কৰিছে তেনে ক্ষেত্ৰত চাবলৈ গ'লে গল্পকাৰে নবাৰণ চলিহাক এজন আমেৰিকা যুক্তৰাষ্ট্ৰৰ MIT গৱেষণা কৰা প্ৰতিভাসম্পন্ন বিজ্ঞানী বুলি প্ৰতিষ্ঠা কৰিছে লগতে তেওঁ কেইবাটাও বিভিন্ন ডাঙৰ অধিকাৰ সন্মুখীন হৈছে বুলি কৈছে আৰু তেওঁ অত্যাধুনিক গৱেষণা প্ৰযুক্তিৰ লগত জড়িত বুলিও গল্পটোত প্ৰতিষ্ঠা কৰিছে আৰু এনেদৰে ইয়াত নেনো প্ৰযুক্তি ত্ৰিমাত্ৰিক কম্পিউটাৰ ত্ৰিমাত্ৰিক প্ৰিণ্টাৰ আদি ব্যৱহাৰ উল্লেখ কৰিছে আৰু কেনেদৰে ত্ৰিমাত্ৰিক প্ৰিণ্টাৰৰ সহায়ত বায়ু পানী মাটি আদিৰ জৰিয়তে আমি অনুপৰমাণু গ্ৰহণ কৰি কেনেদৰে এটা অবিকল বস্তু নিৰ্মাণ কৰিব পাৰো সেই প্ৰচেষ্টা এতিয়া দ্বিতীয় তাজমহল নিৰ্মাণ কৰিবৰ বাবে প্ৰচেষ্টা চলাইছে আৰু তাৰ প্ৰমাণস্বৰূপে তেওঁ বন্ধুবৰ্গৰ আগত একোটা পেপাৰ ৱেট আৰু একোটা প্ৰকাণ্ড শিলৰ অবিকল সৃষ্টি কৰিও দেখুৱাইছে আৰু দ্বিতীয়তে যদি চাবলৈ যাওঁ গল্পটোত উপস্থাপনৰ বিশ্বাসযোগ্যতা গল্পকাৰে দেখুৱাবলৈ সক্ষম হৈছে আৰু গল্পটোত বৰ্তমানত নঘটা কিন্তু ভৱিষ্যতে ঘটিব পৰা একোটা থল অভিজিত শৰ্মাবোৰে ৰাখি থৈ গৈছে কিয়নো তেওঁ গল্পটোৰ মুখনি মাৰিছে যে যিহেতু তেওঁ গল্পটোৰ শেষত নবাৰণ চলিহাই তেওঁ প্ৰাক্তন প্ৰেমিকাক আকৌ পুনৰ বিবাহত সন্মতি প্ৰকাশ কৰিছে আৰু সেয়ে তেওঁ তাজমহল সজাৰ পৰা বিৰতি হৈছে আৰু তেওঁ এইটো প্ৰকাশ কৰিছে যে যদি এইবাৰ তেওঁক দ্বিতীয় পত্নীৰ মৃত্যু হয় তেনেহলে দ্বিতীয় তাজমহল সজাৰ পৰা তেওঁক আৰু কোনেও ৰখাব নোৱাৰে এনেদৰে একোটা ভৱিষ্যতৰ সম্ভাৱনীয়তাও অভিজিত শৰ্মাবোৰে গল্পটোত ৰাখি থবলৈ সক্ষম হৈছে এনেদৰে আমি দ্বিতীয় তাজমহল গল্পক বিভিন্ন কল্পবিজ্ঞান সাহিত্যৰ বৈশিষ্ট্যৰে আমি আলোচনা কৰিব পাৰো আৰু শেষত ক'ব পাৰি যে দ্বিতীয় তাজমহল গল্পটো অভিজিত শৰ্মাবৰুৱাৰ কল্পবিজ্ঞান কল্পৰ এটা সাৰ্থক সৃষ্টি আৰু এনেদৰে যদি আমি কল্পবিজ্ঞান সাহিত্যসমূহ ভৱিষ্যত গৱেষণাৰ বাবে আগবাঢ়িব পাৰো তেনেহলে অসমৰ সমাজ সভ্যতাৰ উন্নতিৰ লগে লগে অসমীয়া কল্পবিজ্ঞান সাহিত্য তথা গল্পৰো উত্তৰণৰ সম্ভাৱনীয়তা থাকিব ইয়াকে কৈ মই আলোচনা পত্ৰখন সামৰণি মাৰিছো ধন্যবাদ
ধন্যবাদ পূবালী তোমাৰ পেপাৰটো সুন্দৰ হৈছে আৰু নতুন এটা মানে আমাৰ চিন্তা যে আমাৰ ইয়াতে আছে যে আমি নতুন এটা কিবা এটা প্ৰকাৰৰ আমি যে মানে ক্লোনিঙো কৰিব পাৰো যে আমাৰ সেই বস্তুটো যে আমাৰ এটা নতুন হেৰি আহিছে সেইটো আহিছে বাৰু বহুত আগতেই কিন্তু এই বস্তুটো যে আমাৰ ক্লোন আৰু এটা মানুহ হ'ব পাৰে আৰু এটা ক্লোনৰ আমি এটা মানুহ হ'ব পাৰো তেনেকুৱা বস্তুটো ৰিপ্ৰডাকশ্যনৰ বস্তুটো অলপমান চিন্তাৰ বস্তু খুব ধুনীয়া পেপাৰ ত্ৰিদীপ আমি নেক্সট প্ৰেজেণ্টাৰ লৈ যাওঁ
So the next presenter is Shilpa Anand. She is an assistant professor in English from Kerala.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible and visible both.
Okay. Thank you, sir. My name is Shilpa Anand, and I'm assistant professor in English at a college in Kerala. And my college is Little Flower College, Guruvayur. And I'm really happy to be here talking to you all. And sir, I would like to share my screen. Shall I?
Yes.
Proceed.
Go ahead.
Okay. So is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you. My topic is I have entitled my paper Prescient Imagination: Rereading Atwood's Mad Adam Trilogy in the Wake of Current Global Issues. My paper is actually a bunch. I would like to present before you a bunch of thoughts that I have had during the last when we were going through this lockdown and the issues related to the COVID-19 crisis. There, I took up to reread Atwood's trilogy, that is the Mad Adam trilogy, and I came upon it dawned upon me how prescient or how prophetic the speculative fiction can be. We have always talked about critics. There have been a lot of criticisms about science fiction and speculative fiction, that it has been relegated to the area of just fantasy, being unrealistic and all. But when we look at our present world and when we read speculative fiction, we understand if speculative fiction is well researched, well studied, and logically executed, it can be actually a pathway or a light shone upon our way ahead. So I'm talking about Margaret Atwood's fictional futures. Atwood has been hailed as a prophet of dystopia by the New Yorker in an article by Rebecca Mead. And the article starts thus. Her fiction has imagined societies riddled with misogyny, oppression, and environmental havoc. These visions now feel all too real. And this was written in 2017. That was way before way before the COVID-19 crisis. It was before the bushfires in Australia. It was before all this, maybe it was just the beginning of the frequent storms and this topsy-turvy climatic situation that we are witnessing today. And with the advent of bushfires in Australia, the ever-increasing frequency of storms, hurricanes, and other natural calamities, and of course the present COVID-19 crisis, the observation seems all the more relevant. And a cursory glance into Atwood's speculative plots can reveal how a well-studied and well-executed works can give a vision into our probable futures, not the exact futures, our probable futures. Among her many books are a handful of what can be labeled as science fiction. And even though Atwood prefers to call her work speculative fiction, she calls her work speculative fictions because her futuristic work speculative fiction because she speculates upon what might happen in the future on the basis of what is happening now here. First, I would like to talk about her 1985 novel, The Handmaid's Tale, and it speculates a frightening future America ruled by religious fundamentalists. A brutal curbing of the rights of speech and expression and the inhuman violence of human rights, as pictured in the novel, have found eerie resemblances in at least some parts of the world. Then comes the Mad Adam trilogy. This is a work that I am focusing on. The Mad Adam trilogy features a destructive pandemic that wipes off the whole of humanity, leaving behind just a handful of people. And we can call them fortunate or rather unfortunate survivors to fend for themselves in a punishing environment altered by climate change. And the presence of a pandemic in the work is exactly what made me select this particular work, Mad Adam trilogy, for study in this paper. Atwood's rejection of the term science fiction is on the grounds that it would demand of her to give something that does not exist. That is, widely hypothetical ideas like time travel, transporters, etc. So she calls it speculative fiction, and she can speculate on the future with the existing world as its foundation. And in the case of the trilogy, and trilogy is usually listed under climate fiction. That is because it gives us a future that is altered by climate change, and most of our speculations have turned out to be true in various degrees. The trilogy features a future world which has altered in dynamic proportions from the world as we see it now. She has not given the exact date or even the decade of when the events would be taking place, but we have to assume that it would be somewhere in the near future. And the three books are Oryx and Crake, which came out in 2003, The Year of the Flood, which came out in 2009, and Mad Adam, which came out in 2013. And in the books, we find two futures. By two futures, I mean the future altered by climate change, that is a foundational future. It is seen through the reminiscence of the survivors like Jimmy, Toby, and Ren, and the post-apocalyptic future, that is a future that comes after the pandemic. The major cause for the change is anthropogenic climate change, and this has drowned a major part of the world, and the rest of the world is surviving merely on technological innovations. Because it is a scorching sun or the lashing rain, there is no way that people can lead a normal life, but it is technology, the highly technocratic life, that is enabling them to move on. She has also touched upon the ideas of species extinction, rising sea levels, large swaths of land left uninhabitable due to natural calamities, depletion of fossil fuels to a breaking point, etc. I know that it is impossible to speak on all these points, so I am trying to shorten my presentation as far as possible. And in the future world, Atwood's future world is divided into two broad sections, and they are called the compounds and the pleblands. The compounds are heavily insulated areas where the creamy layer of the society, that is the highly advantaged group of the society, lives. And they are the scientists, doctors, and extremely rich people. And in fact, the existence of the scientists and the doctors are just for the well-being of the extremely rich people. The pleblands represent the rest of the world living in highly insecure and vulnerable conditions in a very unfriendly earth. This compartmentalization is perhaps a very satiric stab onto the increasingly racist, economically polarized world of today. Then I am now going into the most important issues that is being touched upon by Margaret Atwood and the resemblances of which we can see in our present world. The foundational theme of the trilogy is perhaps climate change, one of the most pressing issues facing the world today. The basic issue that brings about the future projected in the work is an after effect of anthropogenic climate change, that is, climate change brought about by the intervention of man on the processes of the earth. The probability of climatic events mentioned in the narrative increases each day because we see it every day. Even in Kerala, we have had, now we are suffering. We are in the midst of a climate change issue. We have a flood. We have a lot of problems here. And the fictional representation of climate change events play a great role in informing the public that climate change, in spite of all the strategic denial techniques, is real. In spite of all the climate change denial, climate change is real and it is coming to us. It is on our doorsteps. Another important thing is climate apartheid. What can be called climate apartheid, and it is becoming a reality now. Seeing all the climate refugees, seeing all the people who have lost their habitats due to surging seas and all. Philip Aston, who is a member of the panel of independent experts of the United Nations, had made a warning in his report, that is in the last year, that what can be called a climate apartheid is looming upon us. That which means rich people will go on becoming richer, and when a climate apocalypse comes in, they will be able to survive because they have the money to get food, and the poor people will be left to suffer. And this is exactly the world that Atwood creates in her imaginative future through the starkly different compounds and the pleblands. The rich people in the compounds live a life made comfortable by technology. The pleblanders, on the other hand, lead a precarious life devoid of any security at all. Another important issue is species extinction. The rapid extinction of various species is yet another futuristic scenario, and it is also becoming excessively true these days. Jimmy speaks about the idea of a hyena, his idea of a lion. And such animals, hyenas and lions and tigers and elephants, are just ideas for Jimmy. Jimmy is the protagonist, that is one of the survivors of the pandemic. In the future, represented in the trilogy, they are already extinct. Jimmy's term for a mosquito is alien mosquito creature. The animals that Jimmy has actually seen are bioengineered animals called splices that the compound scientists have made for business and fun. That is, man-made animals are the only animals that Jimmy has actually seen. They are, for example, there are snats, milk mix of a snake and a rat, rakent, bioluminescent rabbits, then lyobams. Lyobam is a mix of lion and lamb. Another important thing that we do, that we think of ourselves, we play God in this anthropocentric world. A severe take on the anthropocentric nature of the present world, the trilogy depicts a future wherein people finds pleasure in playing God. Sorry. Create an animal was so much fun, said the guys doing it. It made you feel like God. This occurs in the first book, that is Oryx and Crake. So one of such created animals is a pigun, which are huge bioengineered pigs with actual human properties with multiple internal organs, which can be customized to be used by people when their own organs weaken with age. And this is called this. They have named this thing, this particular process, the Operation Immortality Project. See how adamant humankind is. That is, in order to become immortal, they are creating organs. Food scarcity. The images of food and water is a recurring metaphor in the trilogy, pointing towards a probable future with no real food to eat. Jimmy remembers his birthdays during childhood when a genuine cake, which was really difficult to come by in those days, would be procured. For Jimmy, as a child, a genuine cake is something of a delicacy that he would not get. Jimmy is told that the chicken ops that is available in the compound mess tastes almost exactly like the real chicken they used to get in earlier days. Then we come to the when we come to the after apocalypse world, the three survivors, Jimmy, Ren, and Toby, they survive on stashed away food and energy bars from old times. Then comes the pandemic. This relates Atwood's imagined future into our own present situation here. The pandemic, though man-made in the novel, in the novel, the pandemic is man-made. There is this particular scientist called Craig who procures or creates a pandemic so that he can wipe out the entire humankind. It has a most uncanny resemblance to the current COVID-19 crisis that we are facing today. The novel depicts in eerie detail the loneliness, insecurity, and vulnerability that an uncontrollable virus can steep humankind into. The days of lockdown were the perfect instances of the terrible helplessness hanging over humankind, who were so sure of their superiority and technocracy just a fortnight ago. And this is what Atwood conceived long back in 2003. Then we come to the post-pandemic future as depicted in the novel.
Madam, sorry to disturb you in between, but can we wrap it up in a very short time
Yes, sir,
because
of course,
of
of
the
course, of course. So, even though Atwood's conception of the pandemic is greater than that we actually see today, we come to recognize how literature, how speculative fiction can actually give us a glimpse into what might happen into the future. Not all speculative fiction, if the authors are serious about what they are writing, if they have well researched what they are doing, it can actually give us a glimpse into what is happening. Krakers is not much important in this present situation, but Krakers is another kind of it is a kind of bioengineered beings created by Craig. Then she ends the trilogy with a ray of hope. That is, art can give us a hope. Art can give us hope. When a Cracker boy whose name is Blackbeard, he learns to write from Toby, right? And he begins to note down his own history. Atwood is giving us a hope that in spite of the collapse of everything around us, at least art can help us move on in a future that might be very dark and very destructive. The end vouches for Atwood calls her utopian tradition, destructive but not so lost. So, to conclude, speculative fiction, as I said, if it is well executed and well researched, it can throw light upon the futuristic prospects of the world, and fiction is the best way to create awareness among the common man, because scientific discourses might not be easily comprehensible by the common man. So hence the importance of science fiction and speculative fiction in this time of crisis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shilpi, for your paper. The relevance of art that you spoke about, can you also elaborate in your main paper that you might present, and how art can actually help us to regroup or resist this kind of oppression, the hierarchy produced by media, and all kind of things that you talk about? Obviously, dystopian world that we are actually witnessing, and the crisis is so large that we have been able to identify probably through your paper that there is a crisis. So please elaborate on the relevance of art and how we can actually use art to regroup or to resist all this kind of things. Thank you, Hilpreet.
Sir, actually, I was trying to talk about. Actually, my intention was to express or to underline how speculative fiction or science fiction, as a matter, can actually be of great importance in creating awareness about the crisis situation, about the future, and how we can act now itself to stall an undesirable future that might be coming to us.
Okay, please understand that we must also have some idea about the aesthetics of those kind of resistance.
Of
It's all
course, sir.
right to say that we are all at a loss and there has to be something that has to be done about this. But this aesthetics has to come about. So how you present this aesthetics is also very relevant.
Yes, sir. Exactly. I would be working on that in my paper, which I will be submitting.
Okay, thank you. Feel
Thank you.
free.
Thank you, sir.
Dilip, next paper.
Yes, next paper is from Gaurav Kumar. So he is a student, University of Lucknow.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes. You are audible.
Sir, I would like to share the screen, sir.
Yes, I am allowing you.
Sir, my screen is visible?
Yes.
Okay, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gaurav, and my topic for today's conference is Where There Is Power, There Is Resistance. Resistance to Biopower in Prayag Akbar's Leela. Power has always fascinated human beings. Humans learned how to wield power on animals very early. They also learned to wield power on women via social practices like patriarchy, and they are still figuring new ways to wield power over masses. History has made it obvious that if anyone has given an opportunity to wield absolute power on human beings, he will definitely misuse of it. So the question is, how is one able to assert power over others? Many philosophers and thinkers have debated previously on this topic, but none has come close to explaining how power is operated, as French philosopher Michel Foucault. Foucault's concept of power, subjectification, and resistance have received a great deal of attention in years since his death. Foucault first used biopolitics in his published writing in 1976, first volume of The History of Sexuality, in which he remarked that during the classical period, there was an explosion of many and diverse techniques of achieving the subjugation of bodies and control of population, marking the beginning of an era of biopower. According to Foucault, biopower is the power that state wields over human body and population when it considers humanity as a species rather than as collection of individuals. Through biopower, they seek to optimize human life at the level of population by improving amenities and institutions, including housing, medicine, sanitation, and education, to make society and its economy run more efficiently and productively. One can observe the use of biopolitics in the novel Leela, a 2017 dystopian novel written by journalist Prayag Akbar. The novel is set in 2040s. The story follows Salini, who tries to find her missing daughter, Leila, in the totalitarian regime. In the novel, India is controlled by a government called the Council. The first instance of the Council uses to assert biopower is by dividing the population according to caste system. Physical walls are erected to separate communities from each other, soar in resources of members of elite class, caste, and strive towards a purity of race and social status. In biopolitics, the state constructs subraces of troublesome human encumbrances and uses the sovereignty inherited in biopower to secure the super race of orderly. By persuading the super race that super race by persuading the super race that sub race threatens its survival, the state securitizes itself in two folds. By discouraging the super race from perceiving the state as a threat, second, further inducing the super race to take part in its often oppressive optimization. In the novel, the council uses a group of people called repeaters to enforce their authoritarian principle in society with the aid of physical violence. The, protagon the protagonist of the novel, Salini, who was born a Hindu, marries Riz, a Muslim. They give birth to a girl named Leila. Both Salini and Riz shift to the East End after their marriage, as in the East End, people live without social or caste barrier created by sector walls. Salini gets separated from her daughter when the repeaters attack their home and Riz gets fatally wounded. And Leila is taken away from them. Salini is sent to purity camp, where women who have rebelled against the irrational law of community and they are forced to accept their guilt. Purity camp is one way of council to wield power over the sub-race that is that is the rebelled women. The biopolitical state identifies sub-race not just to prevent resistance to biopolitics, but as the precondition for biopower's efficient operation. The women from purity camp after purification need to work for the elites that are super races. This way, the council not only controls the resistance, but also uses them as a means of productivity of the state. Michael Foucault's theory of panopticism also seen in the novel, as the council uses panopticon model of surveillance to supervise the fragmented sector of the city. The panopticon is a disciplinary concept brought to life in the form of a central observation tower placed within a circle of prison cell. From the tower, the guard can see every cell and inmates, but the inmates cannot see the tower. Prisoners will never know whether they are being watched or not. The purity pyramid is 100 feet tall in the middle of a political sector. It is like tower in the panopticon model. In the novel, individuals are also denied power and freedom and are forced to work according to the council. In contrast to dualistic model that Foucault uses, Foucault proposes a new model that upholds a symbiotic relation between power and resistance. That is, where power is, there is resistance. Power and resistance are on one hand complementary, while conflictual as action and counteraction openly acknowledge the permanent possibility of revolt. In the novel, we encounter many instances of subjugation and suppression of masses, but we also see resistance prevailing in the novel against the biopower. Resistance in the novel Laila. The first instance is the marriage of Salini, who is Hindu and marries a Muslim named Riz. It is the first act of resistance against the council. The council prohibits any kind of inter-religion or inter-caste marriage and focuses on purity of blood. But the couple resisted against it and started a family, giving birth to Leila. Second, the second act of resistance occurs when Salini tries to escape from the purity camp to search for her daughter Leila, though she is caught and brought back to the camp. Third, after coming back to the camp, her sole aim is to make it through the purity camp and get a relatively more dignified job so she can have access to the towers and continue her search for Leila. This is also an act of resistance. In word of Mary Wollstonecraft, I quote, "I do not wish women to have power over men, but over themselves." This way, Salini resists against the council by not accepting the teaching of the council and is immune to any discourses thrown by the council. There is also a rebel army which is trying to resolve the council working underground. Though the novel gives us only a passing insight into emerging rebels group within the council regime, though Salini never mingles with them, but it suggests that where there is power, there is resistance. To conclude, the novel is an open-ended as Salini is still searching for her daughter, surviving the biopolitics of the council. The novel gives a ray of hope in the character of Salini, who can fight in the dark setting of the dystopian regime. To conclude, Foucault's conception of power asserts the potentiality of effective resistance. Even the mightiest sovereign does not possess power only. Rather, power is processual and relational. It is thus present in all biopolitical relations, including dynamics of resistance. Humans do not resist power, but use their power to resist that which oppressive political government willed. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you for the paper. Nice paper. Thank you. Dilip, we can have the next.
Yes, yes, sir. The next presenter is Lakshmi G. Raghunath from Pondicherry University, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lakshmi G. Raghunath. I am a student of Department of English and Comparative Literature, Pondicherry University. Today, my topic is navigating the question of race, marginality, and environment in a post-crisis world, a socio-ecological analysis of N.G. Jemison's Broken Earth trilogy. In the midst of a global pandemic, the world today is also forced to grapple with the worrying news of racial tension as well as climate change. Several scientific studies in the past few months alone have showed a direct correlation between ecological destruction and the emergence of deadly pathogens. Ecological experts are already predicting a grim future of previously unknown infectious diseases along with other obvious effects of climate change. However, the present COVID-19 crisis is a testimony to the reality that not every section of the human society is affected by the ecological crisis in the same manner. For example, in the US, the Black communities are affected harder than the other communities. In India, the migrant laborers, the sanitation workers who are from a specific caste community, the indigenous groups, the tribal groups who are not connected to the world, they are affected more by the pandemic than others. So, in the context of what seems to be an inevitable humanitarian crisis, it is imperative that we rethink our society and the physical environment it exists in. There is a tremendous need for world governments to give social and ecological justice enough attention so that the humans as a species could survive. Literature and art have often worked as conduits of ideas for social transformation, often providing models for the same. Science fiction has been an important literary genre that has addressed the issues of climate change even when serious literature failed to acknowledge it with the same fervor. As novelist Amitav Ghosh in The Great Derangement points out about science fiction narratives, it is precisely not an imagined other world apart from ours. It is not located in another time or another dimension. In this context, this research paper aims to break down acclaimed Black author and Hugo Award winner N.G. Jemison's Broken Earth trilogy, a work of ecological fiction, in order to adequately navigate the relationship between race, social oppression, and ecological injustice. The paper therefore intends to examine the articulation of the imagined subaltern identities in imagined societies in the trilogy that share specific historical similarities to our own lived reality. In doing so, the paper attempts to underline how narratives such as Jemison's is integral to decoding credible eventualities that can affect our lived reality and can aid towards the building of a more egalitarian society. It also attempts to bring out the importance of humanities as a discipline in the post-pandemic world. In the Broken Earth series, which consists of 3 books, the 5th season, The Obelisk Gate, The Stone Sky, all 3 of which was awarded the Hugo Award for Best Novel. Jemison portrays a dystopian world of far future, our own Earth's future, in fact, where technological and racial hubris has resulted in a literally broken Earth with frequent earthquakes, volcanic activities, acid rain, and poisonous vegetation. There exists only one recognizable continent called the Still, which is sparsely populated with humanity. Humanity in the Still have fallen from once highly advanced technological culture to a near medieval one with no indication of any modernity and live in small communities. Every century or so, the Still is faced with a long period in which the environmental conditions completely deteriorate, called the 5th season, and humans are forced to resort to extreme measures to survive, like cannibalism. There also exists a new species of humans called origins, which are who are attuned to seismic activities and are enslaved and hated for their differences. They can control the earth and its movements. Jameson in the series integrates the theme of oppression, both of people and of earth itself, in order to navigate the extent of damage humanity can inflict on itself and its fellow beings. In the still, there doesn't appear to be such a rigid hierarchy of racial difference compared to our world, but Jameson has created a kind of race, the origins, whose stigmatizing character is their power of origin. Jensen defines origin as the ability to manipulate thermal, kinetic, and related forms of energy to address seismic events. In a chaotic world dominated by fifth seasons, those people who are origins have extraordinary importance. They help protect communities from destructive earthquakes and allow humans to survive on the broken earth. Yet they are also profoundly subordinated group who directly contribute to their own repression. This is exactly like how people who are are in the lower sections of the society who build the society are discriminated or marginalized in our communities. They are the builders of the society, but they are not given the fruits of the society. They are also the first victims of the fifth season because of their ostracization from the communities. When the fifth season arrives, when the environment starts deteriorating, these people are thrown out of their communities because they are different. They are slaves and they are just property. Ironically, their oppression is parallel to the oppression of the earth by the earlier technologically advanced race of humans. This world is a far future. It's of our own earth. So our the 40,000 years ago, this earth was actually technologically advanced. They had gone to space. They had all kinds of technology. But since since the event that catastrophe, it was a cataclysm. All the earth was broken up, and humanity was destroyed. The culture was destroyed. Nothing permanent can be made on the earth. It will be destroyed. So everything was destroyed, and the vast amount of knowledge has been lost by the humanity living in the still. The broken earth is a result of an unchecked geoengineering process.
Lakshmi, can you conclude in a brief few
Okay,
sentences?
sir. Okay, sir. I will conclude. In the books, no amount of preparation by the communities actually equip them adequately to face the season, nor can they predict the nature or time of this ecological event. The people of the still live on bare minimum throughout their lives because it is all they can afford to keep because of the unpredictability of the environment. Consequently, this has helped them survive for over 40,000 years. Authors like Montpellot and Patel and more, and steady state degrowth scholars such as Daly, Martinez Allaire, Derrida, Di Maria, and Callis suggest that ceaseless economic growth is intrinsically unsustainable. So the current model of economic growth is unsustainable. No amount of technology we currently possess can adequately predict the consequence of environmental changes, when they will occur, or for what long will they occur, and in what form. So we need to have a we need to live sustainably in order to survive in this planet. And in this post-pandemic world, humanities books like this, just as Shilpa ma'am said, are important in predicting the future of our own society. So when we move to a post-pandemic world, we have to focus more on, just as we have to focus more on environment and medicine, we have to focus on social justice. We have to uh, make a new generation where social justice is also part of the curriculum, or part of how we live. So for that, humanities as a discipline is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmi, for your paper, hard work and all for your paper. Thank you very much. Sudeep, can we go for the next paper?
Yes, sir.
We must actually give them a time limit, no?
Yes, sir. So the next paper is from Kerala. She is a research scholar. Her name is Parvathai MS.
Hello, am I
Hello?
audible? Am
Okay,
I
okay,
audible?
please. Yes, please try to be brief as possible because we are running out of time. We might not be able to actually accommodate all the paper presenters. That is the point. So keep within 5-6 minutes as far as practice goes.
I'm Parvati. I'm a research scholar from Kerala who works at Extinction. My paper is on science fiction. The title of my paper is Monkeys Around When the Screening in the Science Fiction. I always find it confusing every time. Yeah, I just skipped the first 2-3 slides. In fact,
Okay.
the pandemic in the present become very destructive because the population eliminated the restrictions of the space and distance. When the world turned into a global village, embracing the technological advancement, we literally opened up a door to chaos. From this standpoint, I like to raise the science fiction movie 12 Monkeys. So, before you go into the movie, I'd like to give a brief note on the science fiction movies in the 1990s. Of course, 1990s the decade when science fiction movies in the Bollywood make huge box office collection and of the popular pop culture of cinematic universe. There's also a new subgenre was introduced, like youth upper plus. These movies plotted in the themes like malignant afflictions, transgression, scatological representations of youth people, which is not my focus. And I'm going directly to my topic, which is 12 Monkeys, the movie, which was released in 1985, directed by Terry Gilliam. And the movie was November 27th. It was produced by the plot of this movie, when the deadly virus, the survivors are forced to live underground, and the story unravels when the protagonist use the time travel to prevent the pandemic in the first place. Dystopian state. The movie shows a post-apocalyptic world governed by some sort of authoritative government which has forced to or forcing the people to be under strict regulation. In a scene when the protagonist was sent to the surface level to collect supplies, an announcement repeats to make sure that to take full precautionary measures and infected cannot be readmitted to the secured area. And there is a mention of the permanent emergency code, which is a sort of emergency code we now practice in present day because of this quarantine and pandemic situation. In fact, the state follows the Darwin's law of survival of the fittest. Only the immune can survive because the air is poisonous and the pandemic has not yet found a cure. And otherwise you will become a lab rat, tested for experimentation, etc., etc. And the state or power decides what's winning or insane. At a point when the lead character, who's Dr. psychiatrist, was very rationality and validity of the which practices, which is psychology, psychiatry, and
Sorry to disturb in between. Convener sir, can you hear me?
Yes, Dilip.
Sir, I am finding a network issue with the particular presenter.
We can ask her to continue just by speaking. There is no need for screen sharing and all. Parvati? Hello?
you hear me?
Please try to conclude and don't use your PPT because there is a network problem.
Actually, she has been disconnected.
Okay.
Okay, sir. The next presenter is Jyotika Beni.
Okay. Oh, she has come back. Deep, she has come back.
Yes, sir.
Just let her
take me
conclude.
months. Okay, Parvati.
Please conclude within 1 minute. Parvati, can you conclude within a minute?
I'm sending a request to unmute yourself. I'm sending a request to unmute yourself. Madam, I'm sending a request to unmute yourself. Please, I've stopped your video for network issue. Please continue and complete within 1 minute. No need
Can
to share.
you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes.
Just continue and complete within 1 minute.
There is an instance when the ability of this or the power was questioned. The power exercised. Can you hear me?
No, there is a problem, network problem from your side. Don't use your video. Don't use your video. Just speak on the phone. Parvati, please speak on the phone.
Yeah.
Ah.
There is a stance. There is several instances when the power or system was not be governing people in an aggressive or violent manner. Sometimes it is more passive and docile. We don't know that we are being controlled or monitored, and the technology, the over obsession to is questioned in the movie.
Hello, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt you, but there is a severe network problem at your end. So we will contact you. Convener sir will contact you after the end of the program, maybe in the coming days. I would like to bring in Jyotika Beni for her presentation.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes.
You continue.
Sir, is my screen visible? Hello,
Yes, no,
sir.
no. Vinny is not coming. Your screen is not coming. Can you do one thing? Just read out your paper. Whatever you're seeing on the screen, just read out your paper.
Okay, sir. Fine. Good afternoon, all. Myself, Jyotika Beni, postgraduate from St. Joseph's College, Devagiri. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please continue.
Okay. The topic of my paper is the monstrosity of extended reality in Shiv Das' novel Dom Child. Living in a global village ecosystem, we know that how much technology has contributed to our lives. Even extended reality has helped us raise our life standards, and even the possibility of technology overpowering humans are in much away. So, in this paper, I would like to analyze the way extended reality turns into monstrosity in Shiv Ramdas' novel Dom Child, and this novel itself can be considered as a clarion call to our times when we are approaching a period where we cannot live without media at all. Depicting a world where people are dehumanized and controlled by government, assigned boards, and humans as mere slaves of technology, Dom Child gives us
a portrayal of the way humans can be dehumanized in extreme. So, in the novel, there are two halves. One is Dome and the other is Sanctuary. The protagonist Albert comes from Dome, and he is one who is not aware about what is outside the dome. So, to him, Dome is everything, his universe, the perfect, the artificial, the machine controlled, and the dehumanized world where everyone lives. But it is through Theo, one whom he meets in the street, he understands that there is something outside this dome called sanctuary, where there are people known as outliers who are leading a different life at all. And coming to the way the monstrosity of external reality is portrayed, one can understand the way human helplessness is portrayed in the novel. The very beginning of the novel gives us implications about the way humans are dehumanized in a world that is entirely controlled by machines. At the employment department, Albert says deja vu was not a feeling, it was a constant state of being. And when Tweedledum disobeyed the authority, he was dragged by the law boards. The world of the dome is entirely controlled by law boards, care boards, and other such boards. There is nothing that takes place without the intervention of the boards, and the dome doesn't even allow intermingling with people. And there is even a night curfew that is prescribed so that people may not get contact of others. So the technology as presented here won't even allow any emotional imbalance in a person, so that the screen asks Albert, you appear to be having an emotional outburst. The agency of machines upon humans is immense that they are denied of all kinds of freedoms. Then in the street, we come across the way the machines destroy the little children, accusing them of disturbing this man from Dome. Then, coming to artificial intelligence and its catastrophes explained in the novel, it all comes from the Boscanet family and their business. Boscanet family has been a very large business firm, and they, with the help of a scientist robot, creates artificial intelligence. And with that comes the Project Tomorrow, by which technology became the new religion in Earth. Actually, all this happens at a time that was thousands of years ago, the time our protagonist lives, and he himself lives 47,000 and more years after. He is a protagonist from the future, and if we have to deduce at something, we can say these artificial intelligence and all happens at a stage like our contemporary society. And with this artificial intelligence, the company, Buscanet company, became more powerful, and their capitalist profits became more and more, and the company itself became more influential in the universe. And then they began to open up another project of the title Project Icarus, by which they introduced the intelligence interface, and this became the monstrous thing at all. And it was an attempt to create a program, an intelligence interface that can function as a drink by which you can consume the whole of information. But by the introduction of this, what happened was that there arose the information epidemic, which indeed became the greatest plague in recorded history. And the atrocity of the Boscanet resolutions taken to uh, overcome this pandemic of information pandemic, indeed became the utmost catastrophe. So the first resolution was to just address this to others, but the second one was that only those people of this business family will be able to be selected, and uh, they will be employed in a particular space, and they will be treated in a very different manner. And the third solution was to make a lab where people should be tested for how mutations and those things happen when time changes. And the fourth resolution was something a secret that the scientist only knew. So these what all throughout the novel, what the novelist tries to convey is the way machines and technology can be disastrous at a point of time. And dystopias are societies either because of the tyranny of perfect system over the will of individual, or because of the difficulty of stopping individuals or elites from imposing authority over the majority, or indeed over minorities. And recently, in an interview given to Quint, Nandan Nilekini, co-founder of Infosys, had said, I quote, tech is being used in ways which we couldn't imagine. Even the Supreme Court is hearing cases online. And at a stage like this, with the increased invasion of technology into all our lives, though it makes many changes and it shatters even the boundaries of information restrictions, one cannot deny the scope of such a disastrous, monstrous future awaiting. And as the father character in whom Albert comes across in Sanctuary says, "E- um, as much as for everything, there are possibilities, both positive and negative. When we praise something for the positive sides, one should also consider the fact that there must be another darker side as well." Thank you.
Thank you, Jyotika. Nice paper. You have highlighted two very important aspects: technology in the service of capitalism and the information epidemic. I'd like you to elaborate on that when you present your full paper. Okay, Jyotika, how do you use technology? And if you can actually interrelate this with sociological or Marxist or anti-Marxist, whatever your point of view is, and how you talk about information pandemic and how you explain this idea. And can you use this also in the present scenario? Jyotika?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Even now, we are in such a kind of information pandemic, I believe. So,
Yes, that's true. But you might just use your novel as a foundational text to highlight the present situation that we are in and how technology is being used in the service of capitalism.
yes, and if we are to look at this businesses now growing up or to be grown up in the future, all those businesses that update with technology only survive.
How we can actually resist those kind of capitalistic maneuvers if there is a possibility actually. So I don't know. We don't know for sure if that is a possible possibility that we can actually think about. Okay, so please elaborate on that. Huh?
Okay, thanks.
So the next presenter is Mitrabrata Goswami.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, madam, please kindly submit yourself.
Yes.
You are audible, ma'am.
Mitrabrata Goswami.
Yes,
Yes.
he's an assistant professor, Department of Food Technology, but West Bengal, from West Bengal.
Yes, I can screen. Okay, I'm sharing the screen. Okay. Are my slides are visible?
No,
Hello?
madam, your slides are not visible. You shared a screen. Yes, it is coming.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mr. Vata Goswami, Assistant Professor of Department of Food Technology and Memory College of Engineering, Macau. So my title is Predicting a Future with Synthetic Biology. So welcome to 2020. What a worst year we have been till now. There's a everywhere breakdown like healthcare in the healthcare system, in the economical system, and everywhere. There's a
Madam, there is a problem with your audio. Please switch off your any electronic devices. It's nearby you.
Okay. Now is it okay?
Yes, it is okay, ma'am.
Okay. So what a worst year we have till now. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there's a everywhere breakdown in the healthcare sector or in the um, economic sector and everywhere. So nextly, I would like to say, are we enough developed? Maybe the answer is no, because before this pandemic, we were building the atomic missiles and the weapons, but we are not able to prevent this type of pandemic. So, as Stephen Hawking suggests before dying, and he tells that we have to move our civilization in a different planet. If we live long with our human civilization, so maybe the legend have realized that there is a large threat coming towards the mankind in future. So the things we need to do in future, more developed research field in the biology, including the agriculture, healthcare, and astrobiology here I mentioned because if we want to move our civilization in a different planet, we need a better astrobiology and a synthetic biology also, and etc., and more developed engineering and more established economical system, and etc., because the next threat we can't even imagine, like the COVID. So now what we can do now, predict a better future and redesign everything. It may be a better option for us. So here synthetic biology is it may be a better option towards the future. And as the topic of the webinar suggests that science fiction for a better future. So uh, synthetic biology is got a little bit of science and a lot bit of science fiction also. So, what is synthetic biology? Synthetic biology is a maturing science discipline where combines science and engineering. Engineering, where is engineering for biology, and can broadly be described and designed and constitution of novel and artificial pathway organisms or devices or redesign existing natural biological system. So this is the common definition of synthetic biology. In other words, I can say synthetic biology is a field of biological research where we design existing biological system, redesign an existing biological system, or design a new evolved biological system. So, on the way of synthetic biological research, build a biological system as on the way to explain how the principles of engineering generates a new tool and knowledge to enable the biological based solution and the social challenges. Welcome the participation on the communities with diverse the training on the foster creativity and growth of the field of interconnected with human values through the use of cost benefits and science and technology. So, on the adventure of synthetic biology, it's a broadly term has been used reference to effort redesign life. This use of the term as extension of the concept of biochemistry, which organic synthesis used to create an artificial molecule. So let us see now the system biology with the relation between system biology and synthetic biology. The system biology aims to study the natural biological system as a whole, often with the biomedical focus uses the simultaneous and the modeling tool to comparison with experimental information, and systematic biology aims to build a novel and artificial biology to biological parts and devices and systems. So let us know what is biopart. Biopart is a standard provides framework whereas can be reused various type of application achieve of specific function of intent for the devices. So nowadays, immunological field is the very important field. Maybe due to the COVID pandemic situation. So synthetic immunology may be a greater solution for this. So what is synthetic immunology? Synthetic immunology is actually is a rational design and constitution of synthetic system that perform a complex immunological function. The function include using the specific cell markers, the target cells of destruction or the interfacing immune reaction. So here, as I mentioned, also mentioned that U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the immune system modulators include the anti-inflammatory and the anti-immunosuppressive agents, vaccine and therapeutic antibodies, and also the troll-like receptor and agonitis also. Maybe there is a possibility via synthetic biology we could able to create a artificial intelligence immune system where we can detect and pretend the from unknown threats that are that like COVID. So let us know a part of synthetic biology, which is mirror life. Mirror life is also mirror image life or chiral life, where hypothetical form of life with mirror reflecting molecular building blocks. As I'm talking about this, there may be a concept of antimatter involved like this in topic. The possibility of mirror life is also discussed by Louis Pasteur, although the alternative life form is not been discovered in nature. The effort to build the mirror image version of biological molecule machinery is already underway. So as I'm talking about mirror life, I'd like to mention here a fictional novel where mirror life is explained, recent novel actually. In 2017, Daniel Suarez novel, Change Agent and antagonist Otto, nicknamed Mirror Man, relevant to be the genetically engineered anatomic human views on the human disdain cause them feel inexpressible repulses by his presence. So here I am also talking about artificial intelligence life. If we can transfer our brain in a computer system, or we live after death, it would be a better option. With synthetic biology, we can do theoretically this, but currently we could not have done this. So what are the development and the possibilities via synthetic biology is possible in the healthcare sector, in the industrial sector, in the environmental sector, and also in the energetic field? So those are some examples in the healthcare sector, in the energetic sector, and the environmental sector, and the agriculture, and the other industries like biological computers, logic gates, switches, and etc. Finally, there is a gift from synthetic biology that we get in 2019 recently, which is called Hachimoji DNA. A different, we know the DNA ATGC base pairs, where is A makes bond with T and G with C. But Hachimoji DNA is completely newly designed DNA by NASA, DNA by NASA, where are bases like P, Z, B, S, where P is bind with Z and B bind with S. Hachimoji DNA is also, Hachimoji DNA can also pretend many diseases and digital data storage and barcoding, self-assembling nanostructure and etc. This can be used in the astrobiological field also. So finally, I can say that we are predicting the superhuman from the age of mythology to age of Marvel. So it's very relevant for us. But it is but with synthetic biology we can make superhuman, and like their properties like quick healing property and the superhuman properties and etc. So finally, in the concluding part, I would like to say that when I starting the article writing article about the science fiction that create a better future, for my article most appreciable title was predicting a better future with synthetic biology. But at the time when I submitted the article, it came to my mind that to remove the better word, because we are just a little occurrence in the small blue planet in the big cosmos. We can just make suggestions. We can't pretend everything. So those are my reference. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I'd like to call Rajat Subra Mandal uh, from West Bengal.
Am I both audible and visible?
Yes, yes, we are both audible and visible.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you to the organizing committee of Damdama College for letting me present my paper, and thank you for the fellow paper presenters. They were absolutely mesmerizing. My paper today is titled "Do Robots Deserve Rights?" or should I say post-human rights, rather. The research gap of my paper will not only investigate the notions of technoculture and technoscience at work in science fiction, but it will also, in the form of critical post-humanist readings of some examples of science fiction, analyze the general relationship between humanism and technology. My research paper seeks to deconstruct the cultural political influence of the genre of sci-fi on the postmodern site of post-humanization. Within 21st century, everyday life of popular culture, one is constantly confronted with post-human visions of technology. In the face of the omnipresent popularization of the cyborg scenario, it becomes clear that all old as well as the new media play a key role in the transformation of a humanist cultural imaginary into a post-humanist 21st century technocultural imaginary. And computer games, chat rooms, Facebook, Snapchat, Insta DMs, all these new forms of experience and online communicational spaces not only change personalities but also human abilities, and thus affect the cognitive patterns of the next generation, the Gen Y, Gen X, Gen Z, and so many gens, etc., etc., etc. Now, let me ask ourselves a few disturbing research questions. One, to what extent will this technologization of childhood affect or have already affected the humanist ideal of childhood? Two, are we indeed facing the end of childhood? Really? Three, are we on the threshold of an interface of complete disenchantment of children's environments due to technological virtualization? Fourth, are our kids becoming Stranger Things, as Netflix series would say you? Welcome. We are in cyberspace, where common sense gets softwared and hardwared through the learning process of informatization. Bemoaned, decentered subjects are not only the product of post-humanizing technologies alone, but are an integral part of deconstructionist techno-utopian and techno-dystopian visions. Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z kids are only emblems of a huge tip of iceberg. But the trouble is that that iceberg is melting, and it's melting pretty fast. And no wonder that techno-utopian and techno-dystopian visions are almost always invariably apocalyptic. The popular science weekly magazine New Scientist would say, better than human, why settle with whatever you are born with? Now it expresses a new symptomatic plasticity of the human in the age of technological post-humanization. Now, The Incredibles, after the eponymous Disney Pixar animation movie which appeared in 2004 and which represents an entirely average family of superhumans, heroes, Now, this is noteworthy because it hints at a general trend in which movie culture, popular culture, and popularization of science and technological evolution, hence science fiction in the literal sense of the fictionalization of science and technology, is being made accessible on a large scale of what we call a kind of a post-human new normal. Now they are here walking among us, Captain America, Tony Stark, the Incredible Hulk, the rest of the Avengers of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. My previous presenter was talking about the mythology from Marvel. Yes, I would echo that. People with technologically enhanced senses, superhuman bodies, and artificially sharpened intellect. The first humans to reach a happy 150th birthday may already have been born, and that is just the start of it. Fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know. Have you fastened our seatbelts? Are we in for the ride? And that is $1 million question that Homo sapiens have got to answer right now, right here. Most visibles is the importance of science fiction in its Hollywood blockbuster incarnation. Examples of this form we can see in Minority Reports, where the brain scan would tell you almost like somebody what is your thinking already inside your mind. Now, the media and pop culture by far prefer working with cliches of mad scientists like Dr. Frankenstein, but robot soldiers and kryptonites are no longer just film fantasy anymore. My research paper therefore proposes questions whether future forms of artificial intelligence and robots deserve to be granted human rights or superhuman rights or post-human rights. There is Arnold Schwarzenegger's image wherever there is a talk of prosthesization, who in Terminator in 1984 revealed the three aspects: man, machine, and masculinity. Oh God, America loves so much of them. And it is thus no coincidence that genre of science fiction has gained so much importance within the cultural representations of techno-scientific capitalism. I call it techno-scientific capitalism in the context of media culture and film culture. Now, this is the artificial position, it is true. However, it stands against an equally constructed humanity. But let's question this constructedness, by the way, against the grain. To read from a post-humanist perspective means to put question in one's own human self, at least temporarily, and to suspend one's both ontological as well as, what should I say, epistemological subject position. So humanity would then stand deconstructed. And in this sense, long-standing dreams of humanity like space travel in Netflix's Dark, or say intergalactic peacekeeping movements, say like Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, are literally made true. They are thus visualizations of the symptoms of a kind of a repressed energy of post-human humanities. In the age of Jean Baudrillarian hyperreality, a simulacrum, technology, science fiction becomes a typical form of expression of a technological imaginary, a fiction which has lost its dialectical other, that is science and fiction. And I call it science faction because it's a factualization of fiction. So science fiction is gradually moving into science faction, by the way. And science fiction shakes humanist value system to an extent where the ontology of the human becomes precarious. Sci-fi portrays this loss of control over the human form as terminal identity, and which constitutes a transitional state produced at an intersection of technology and a kind of a humanist narrative. Now, it is an interdiscursive, to conclude my paper, I will take a couple of minutes. It is an interdiscursive site of contemporary cultural imaginary in the post-humanist milieu of digitalization, cyborgization, virtualization, and prosthesization. Then are the aliens, androids, the mobile phones, the artificial intelligences of sci-fi, the barbarians storming at the gate of post-humanity? Really? Is fiction still following any reality here? Or has the reality following Jean Baudrillard's well-known claim long disappeared within the nexus of fictionalization, hyperreality, or Baudrillard's simulacrum? Now, the titles like Hollywood Got It Wrong and how this is stopped to apocalyptic asteroid. Now, this rubric of Hollywood narrative is strategically used to hand the reader a more scientific explanation without, however, in a way of dispelling the apocalypticism of the film. In general, the Hollywood desperately positions itself to legitimate the source of representations, anamorphic and unrepresentable. And in a situation that traits in its bread butter genesis of filmic representation, America always as the savior, and we, the Indians, the Africans, and Latin Americas, always the saves. See, look at the movies like Universal Soldiers, Independence Day. American armies always protect the world, and world is there only to be protected by the Americas. So as if the sci-fi American series becomes almost a Hollywoodization of NASA articulation of American hegemonic masculinities. Now, therefore, Hollywood exports science fiction and imports cultural, vultural imperialism and gratitude. And we consume those cultural products like American sci-fi, like sandwich, hot dogs, or say burger. It is the stuff of nightmares until now, Hollywood thrillers and blockbusters. A huge asteroid, this is my conclusion, a huge asteroid is on a catastrophic collision course with Earth, and mankind is poised to go the way dinosaurs went. And to save the day, NASA now plans to go where only Bruce Willis has only once gone there. Thank you. Thank you so much for tolerating me.
Roger, should I say that you are very, you are very unhappy with America and the kind of masculinity you see?
No, sir, I am not unhappy. May I add one little thing to your question, sir? Yes, I am not unhappy with America, but the way America always comes and protects the whole of us, the Indians and everyone. And that is somehow we are there only to be protected by these Americans. So what NASA is doing, exactly something that Hollywood is articulating. And what Hollywood is doing, NASA
So Rajat, can you suggest, this is a kind of very, what you call a very capitalistic, westernized perspective of progress and globalization. Can you actually suggest something that is Eastern, mystical, I mean, whatever the West might say about us, whether they call it jugglery or trickery or kind of snake charming or whatever, we must actually produce alternative stories and alternative domains to the domains produced by Hollywood and America. That is one thing. But America also has what you call two kinds of establishment. One is obviously the political establishment, which is held by technocracy. That is another establishment, that is the academic establishment, where we talk about social welfare. America also had the highest subsidy rates for the farmers also. So are we replicating America and the capitalistic dreams of America in somehow in a very malformed and disformed way in most third world countries? Or should we actually do something better for ourselves by going for the Gram Swaraj developed by Gandhiji? When he talked about what you call this kind of coming together of people, despite the fact that they were naked people, had nothing to show off and whatever.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, sir. I would go with the second part that you came up with, and I would like to develop that particular rubric if I am given the opportunity to contribute the full paper in your college.
Please do that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We'll look forward to your right. Okay,
thank you. Thank you.
Okay, before moving to the next presenter, I would like to mention to Rajat sir that there are different questions posed at you on YouTube Live, our channel. So at the end of the session, please be prepared to answer few questions from your end.
Okay, sir. Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call the next presenter, Rohit Singh Tomar. Rohit Singh Tomar from Uttar Pradesh.
Yes, sir. I am audible, sir?
Yes.
Okay, sir. Good evening to all of you. My name is Rohit Singh Tomar. I am from Rampur, pursuing B.Ed from Government Radha PG College, and my topic is related to child's effect of science fiction on the psychological growth of child. Actually, sir, there is a network problem in my home, so I am in the market, so there is little noise come from the bikes or cars that are going. So, sir, please forgive me for that. In the present scenario, where technology has increased manifold, every day we witness many new inventions in every sphere of our day-to-day activities. So the interference of technology in the recreation activity is not new. Many movies uses animation beyond the true life and compel to things about the way they are. With the use of animations, graphics, there is a starting of new area of revolution in the gaming, filming industry. We see many new games like PUBG, Free Fire, Temple Run, in which people have wasting their precious time. So addiction by child is not a new thing, and by this game there is a chemical released by our brain, the dopamine, which give us the feeling of rewarding. So, but the in pandemic also make the problem worse, as now parents did not allow their children to play outside. So children sitting all days, whether it is studying or whether it is recreation activities, they are in front of the computers, tablet all day, and gaming continuously to 3 4 hours have affect their cognitive, physical, psychological capacity at large, and make them lethargic, prone to many new diseases like obesity, BP, hypertension, weakening of eyesight, which affect them at long run. As every dark cloud has silver lining, so every problem has solution. There is a need to work in this problem at every level, that is in the parenting, community level, society and government level. Parents should motivate their children to learn new skills instead of wasting their time in gaming like painting, dancing, gardening. And at society level, there is a need to understand the needs of sport and gaming in the physical and mental growth of child. And at government level, there is a need of proactive steps like banning of some addictive games which are very addictive, and limiting, if not banning, then limiting their time periods to hardly to 30 40 minutes. If we do not understand the call of today time, then it become very late, and we will prepare a society which is physically, mentally backward and prone to many health problems, and hence affect the economy of our nation at large. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for listening me patiently.
Thank you, Rohit Singh Tomar. And convener, sir, I would like to mention that Rohit Singh Tomar was also present in our last webinar, and he presented the paper Migration in India, a Gender Perspective. So Rohit Singh Tomar, on
Yes,
behalf of the organizing committee, I really thank you for joining again in our college to present your paper. Thank
ji,
you
sir.
very much.
Thank
So
you.
the next presenter is Neha Jain from, she is a research scholar at the National Institute of Technology, Silchar. Neha Jain.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes. Neha, please go on.
Yes. So I'm going to share my screen if network is not an issue.
You can try once, ma'am.
Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. So good afternoon, everyone. So my study is titled Understanding Crisis, a study of selected science fiction. So I basically attempt to understand, rather problematize the concept of problematize the concept of crisis, how the genre of science fiction deals with crisis and catastrophes. So in my study, I look at crisis through the lens of three prominent science fiction works: The Andromeda Strain, written by the celebrated American writer Michael Crichton in 1969; I, Robot, a very famous film directed by Alex Proyas in 2004, adapted from Asimov's I, Robot; and Cell, a post-millennial novel by Stephen King. So first of all, I briefly look at the genre of science fiction, and I would reflect on Darko Suvin's, Patrick Perinder, and Veronica Hollinger, and others whose workings on science fiction have been instrumental in establishing the genre as a having a socio-aesthetic importance. So I would skip the portion basically because of the limited time which we have. I'll just focus on three words, which Suveen had pointed out in his understanding of the genre as having a cognitive estrangement. So it comes up with something new and strange. It estranges us from our reality and presents us in strange circumstances. So which works in two aspects. First, we imagine strange worlds and we come to see our own conditions of life in a new and revolutionary perspective, as Patrick Purinder said. And the second way, we actually start getting accustomed better accustomed to face crisis situations in future. As in a recent NY Times article, J.P. Tillot pointed out that science fiction helps us face our fears rather than suppressing them. It is therapeutic, counterintuitive in a sense. So that brings me to the core of my paper. So how is the novum, the strange, or the imaginative framework like realized in science fiction? Like through catastrophes, through inventions, through wars, apocalyptic and utopic futures and spaces. So within this ambit, I'd like to talk upon two aspects science fiction looks at catastrophe in. First, crisis from an external body, that is crisis which comes from the outer world on which we do not have any power. And secondly, crisis arising out of technophobia or from a man-made species, gadget or robot, whatever like be it. As crisis from an outer world, I'll be looking from the perspective of Andromeda Strain, and the other one, the man-made gadget robot crisis, which I'd be looking from the lens of iRobot and Cell. So moving on to the next slide. Before I take to analyze the case studies, let's first look at the term crisis very briefly. So John F. Kennedy, in a speech while highlighting the Chinese understanding of the term, pointed out that while one part of the term means danger, the other part implies an opportunity. And that is according to the Taoism principles of the Chinese thought. So the term crisis has long been generally used in a medical parlance, indicating a turning point in the progress of a disease. So from a relatively scientific base, the term today, however, has a wider usage, primarily because be it a medical, economic, social, political, or environmental crisis, the effect on humanity is deep and widespread. I would take a phenomenological interpretation of crisis and would here take the liberty of drawing Husserl's point of view in the crisis of European sciences and transcendental phenomenology. So it's not, it is a crisis not just of the scientificity of sciences, but also of its meaninglessness of life. That's what he writes when he talks about the crisis in between the sciences, the natural sciences and the human sciences. I'll just take that point and bring it here today. Crisis is not just about the outbreak of a disease or a medical failure. It is the crisis about the human understanding of it. So the crisis ensues the moment we are imposed to a subjective experience. For instance, I recall an early lockdown meme which surfaced on my Facebook. Like there was a meme saying, in 1 minute, the clock strikes 60 times and I blink my eyes 28 times. So that's because of the consciousness of 1 minute. So a minute of time is not just a minute of time, but it is how we experience it. So crisis also has this aspect. So crisis is when there is a consciousness of crisis. So it brings me here to some important questions, many of which Dr. Giridhar Rao has already pointed out in his talk yesterday. So in the second part of my presentation, I would like to throw light upon, or rather invoke a discussion on some central concerns as what makes an event a crisis? What happens to humanity during a crisis? What happens to democracy and responsibility during a crisis? And how do people react on the face of calamity? What can be expected post a catastrophe? So moving on to the first concern, which I would like to address, I'd very briefly introduce my case studies here. So the Andromeda strain. So the entire population of Arizona is wiped out as a military spaceship returning from the outer space carrying a lethal extraterrestrial microorganism, Andromeda, crash lands. So Andromeda is obviously a lethal extraterrestrial microorganism. And as the spaceship lands carrying Andromeda, the population is killed. Blood clot happens, people turn insane, start killing themselves, or are actually killed by the effect of the organism. The novel follows the struggle of the scientists as they strive to contain Andromeda in an underground quarantine facility and find a possible solution to the crisis. Moving on to the second case study, iRobot. So in iRobot, all hell breaks loose as the nest of class 5 robots rise in a revolt against humans, killing them mercilessly due to a programming error perpetuated by the master artificially intelligent computer, Wiki. So it is 2035 and robots are there in every field of work. Alfred Lenning, the founder of US robotics, is murdered, and Del Spooner, a cyborg detective, is asked to solve the mystery of the death of the legend and save humanity from the crisis perpetuated by the deathly robots. So in the third case study, Cell is Stephen King's take on a zombie outbreak rendered by a technophobic culture. A mysterious virus, the pulse, emitted from the mobile tower satellite, turns huge number of people who own phones into zombies. What follows is the protagonist Clayton Riddle's struggle to unite with his family and save his son from the phone virus. So moving on, so that's how we see that what is central to a crisis situation. So death and struggle for survival, struggle to meet the family is central to any crisis situation, and it is a central trope perhaps through which science fiction portrays strangeness, apocalypse, or utopias. So moving on to my next slide, or to the next concern. What happens to humanity in a crisis? So I bring in Agamben here. So the Italian philosopher Giorgio Agamben. So he says human beings are reduced to bare bodies, or as Foucault says, human beings are rendered as docile bodies who act on the will of the powerful other. So in King's Cell, the moment the pulse attacks, the common people forget everything, forget everyone, and become insane zombies ready to eat, kill, and convert each other. The reduced, zombied, dehumanized bodies of the protagonist's wife and son, Johnny, aptly portray the dilapidated condition of humanity affected by the crisis. So let us dive deeper into the texts. So I would skip this portion because of the shortage of time. Otherwise, I'll have to talk a lot about the deeper aspects of the text. I would just say what are the things common in both the texts. So in all the texts, rather. So while the Andromeda strain takes us back to the past and gives us a picture and idea about how to deal with the crisis as such, it offers us solace in the hope of a mutation of Andromeda into something harmless. So ultimately what happens is Andromeda mutates itself and becomes harmless. In the quarantine facility, Andromeda escapes the contamination zone. The nuclear destruction system is automatically switched on, and now the scientists are worried that they won't be killed by Andromeda, but they'll be killed by the nuclear facility system, which is on an automated mode. So the struggle is changed. They are struggling to stop their deaths from the nuclear destruction and not from Andromeda, because Andromeda has already mutated into a harmless form. So iRobot gives us a suggestion to hold back and suspend our advanced creations one generation back. It does ask us to return to a primal state of nature, but only advises a step backward, allowing the default programming of Nesta class 5 robots to survive. This is not what the Indian cinema robot suggests. The Indian cinema robot suggests a complete ban on robots. Similarly, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury strictly advises a return to nature. So what iRobot perhaps does is that it recognizes an entirely new species, more human than the humans. The robots identify themselves as I, having a distinct identity. So Cell by Stephen King is, however, unique in its take on the gadget reliance. King perhaps points out that it is no more possible to return back to an empty machine state, to a natural state. Solution of a crisis is initiated by science will have to come from the science of the gadget itself. So there has to be another virus which would defeat that virus, or there has to be an antivirus which would, reduce the effect of that virus. And that is exactly what happens by the end of the novel. By the end of the novel, the father actually rings on the phone back and starts to channel an antivirus and places the phone against his son's ears, so that when the phone rings again, his zombied son might transform into a human, a normal again, and we do not know what happens. However, there is an indication of an optimistic ending of the novel. So there's a note of acceptance. So acceptance of the situation, of the fate, of the failures, and efforts. A similar take is displayed in 2016 South Korean film Train to Busan by Yong Sang-ho. So what's common in all these cases is the struggle. And is the organic self-evolving nature of the crisis leader, the ever-mutating Andromeda strain, the ever-evolving wiki, and the mutating pulse. Similarly, we'll see in COVID also, every person is affected, is having a different kind of a symptom. So the virus itself is mutating into higher and more intense and less intense versions of it. So these lethal spaces demand us, perhaps, to look at the universe in a post-anthropomorphic perspective and accept the harsh truth that we are not the only ones. Humanity, in all these novels, in all these texts, is torn between individual and collective responsibility. Now I move on quickly to my next concern. What happens to democracy and responsibility in times of a crisis? I briefly bring in Agamben again, and is much controversial, very recent contention on the state of exception. What role does state play in a crisis? What happens to truth during a crisis? So when the spaceship returns from the outer atmosphere with a lethal virus, who is to blame? The spaceship was sent by the Earth people themselves. Who tampers the cell phone signal in the cell? Who is to blame for the massive damage to mankind posed by the robots? In this regard, I'll briefly read out a portion of Agamben's recent writing, a question. And quote, the first point, perhaps the most serious, concerns the bodies of the dead persons. How could we have accepted, solely in the name of a risk, that it was not possible to specify that persons who are dear to us and human beings in general should not die alone, but something should not only die alone, but something that had never happened before in history from Antigone to today, that their cadavers should be burnt without a funeral. So how could we have accepted without too many problems in the name of a risk that is not even specified completely, that we have stopped our democracies and our rights so abruptly? So Gaurav, the last speaker, one of the last speakers, has already briefed about Foucault in his talk. I'll just carry forward. Agamben carries forward Foucault's biopolitics into having secret ties with sovereignty and thus questions the role of state machinery in a crisis situation. Here, the COVID. The point is not whether we agree with Agamben or not. The point is that this also is a side of crisis which suspends democracy and individuality. SF, science fiction, time and again puts forward this point in a very ambiguous manner, like Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, Cell, Brain by Robin Cook, Andromeda Strain, 12 Monkeys, as Parvati just pointed out, and many, many others. So now I'll just move on to the next. How do people react on the face of a calamity? I'd like to look at COVID crisis in terms of SF portrayals of catastrophe. We have all witnessed immensely a painful scenario on the migrant laborers craving to move to their homes. Many of us are actually the ones who migrated. So Clayton Riddle in Stephen King's Cell, Dr. Reaux and Raymond Rambert in Albert Camus' The Plague struggled tirelessly to unite with the family. The quarantine surfaces as a longing for a nostalgic and utopic past. But the question is, was the normal past really utopic? The quarantine has provoked reflections on the same. What is longing? I would here quote Willinger, quote, longing becomes an oscillation between what is and what could be. Longing is about savoring different possibilities, about swaying back and forth in reflection, yet never quite arriving. With this note, I'd say that the quarantine strengthens us, strengthens our family ties while putting us in an exile situation. So now moving quickly forward to the concluding remarks, I just wrap up by saying that the entire idea of crisis or catastrophe is perhaps somehow related to a sudden breakthrough. An extreme point is reached after all hell breaks loose. This breakthrough guarantees an opening and warrants a change, perhaps a change for better. SF shows it all through its multiple alternate futures, some dystopias, some utopias. We either find a cure for the crisis, as in Andromeda, or discover alternate ways and opportunities out of it. We accept the crisis, we defeat the crisis, and even if we succumb to it, we are actually fighters and not losers. So with this optimistic note, I dressed my paper hinting at a possible better post-crisis phase for all of us. So with a quote, what we learn in time of pestilence, that there are more things to admire in men than to despise. So this is a quote from Kamus of Lake. Thanks to the entire team of Damdama College and all the people who have been bearing with me all this while. My wishes to all.
Thank you, Neha. Brilliantly articulated. But like elsewhere, there is an issue that I'd like to ask. Like to point out. Most of our paper presenters, we have been all educated in the philosophical systems of the West, and we like to address our problems through their philosophical approach. I do not see anything wrong in that perspective, but can we do something, or can we do something differently? Say, address global issues through perspectives which have been offered by our religious systems or our philosophical systems. I do not want to draw from religion. Can we try to draw from our philosophical systems, whatever has been given to us or handed down to us through the traditions? Maybe because, like for example, we use turmeric more than the West, and turmeric is something that has been seen to be helpful in Alzheimer's and all this kind of treatments. So I think there is an Eastern way of life and there is a Western way of life. The Western way of life, because it is more urbanized, more industrialized, it is more what you call artificial. People say this, that it's very artificial, but somehow also we need to learn from our own traditions while also accepting something from the West. The West is obviously is progressing very fast in terms of philosophical ideas as of now. But can we draw something from our own cultures and our own traditions? I think that is a pertinent thing that I'd like to ask you.
Definitely we can. Definitely we can. Why not? Like, I'm a Jan, and if I start using my own philosophical principles, there's a lot to draw upon and bring in the issues of nonviolence and live and let live and go on and go on. And we can bring in those assumptions from Buddhism and Jainism, not too much acquainted with Hinduism, deeper Hinduism principles and all. But then I do believe that we can. But because it was a paper which I wanted to look at through the lens of science fiction, I wanted to look at it through the lens of Western philosophical principles, given the COVID situation as a global pandemic, which affected perhaps primarily is affecting more the Western world now, and now coming to India, and perhaps the degree of the disease is somehow lesser in India than it is in the West. So I thought, let's look at the entire issue from a Western perspective and not an Eastern perspective.
No, the problem with India probably is, Neha, that we have been hiding so many things. Like we have been not telling our own citizens that how many people have been actually infected by the virus. And there's so many statistics of people actually dying. We do not know actually if there is dying from COVID virus or dying because of a heart ailment or dying because of cancer or dying because of typhoid or so many other things. Like the rest of the world, we are trying to hide so many things from our own people. Now,
that's what I pointed out in one sentence of my write-up, and that's what we don't know what happens to truth in a crisis situation. So that summed up for everything which you said. Now I didn't enter deeper into it. We don't know what the truth is. So whenever you open the TV and you look at the social media, there are perhaps million versions of truth circulating everywhere.
But do you admit that there is something like a deconstructive point of view in India also? That the deconstruction had its roots in India, not in this what you call in the philosophy of France. In France, it had its roots in Buddhism, particularly.
Yeah, definitely, I would believe. Rather, my belief in all these things would be it's just the way how you look at it. If you start excavating the cultures, the philosophy of India, you'll find that India also has a base of all these things right from ages and ages and ages before. So that's not actually a point of conflict. Whichever country you go, it has its own. Whichever community or country, it has its own history.
it's not a point of conflict, Neha, but I would like to suggest that, like most paper presenters, we're trying to see our problems like their problems. That's all right, but we can also draw from our own philosophical ideas, what we have inherited also, and we can also use this as a kind of a complement or supplement to the ideas being initiated in the West. Derrida is very good, but Derrida had his roots in India probably. That's what I learned from somewhere. I do not want to mention, but probably Derrida had his roots in India. But that has nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with Hinduism in particular, nothing to do with any kind of metaphysical belief. Just an idea. That's just an argument. Thank you for your paper. Please develop it.
I take your suggestion and I'll start excavating the Indian roots of philosophy now. All this while I had been into the Western roots of the philosophy. Thank you so much. I just divert my attention to the Indianness of philosophy and the philosophies of the Indianness. Thank you so much.
That's very good, very good. Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tridip, our second paper.
Hi, sir. Hi. Mane, sir, eta issue eta hoise. The issue is that the last paper presenter is Tanisha Singh Sikawar. Hi, but the invitation for panelist was only sent to Tanisha Singh Sikawar and not the co-presenter. So what we can do now, I've asked Tanisha Singh Sikawar to unmute as well as start her video, and I will add means we'll open the audio line of the co-partner of Tanisha, co-presenter of Tanisha Singh Sikawar. So Tanisha Singh co-partner cannot come live on video, but his audio lines will be open. We can do it, sir, convener sir, in that manner.
Maybe yes.
Okay, Madam Tanisha, madam, is it okay? I will add your.
Like Farzia Khan or Farzi Khan.
Yes, I'm getting the issue on the chat box. I'm trying to give me just a few seconds. Okay.
Yeah. Hi. Yes, I'm here.
Tanisha, ma'am.
Yeah.
Your co-presenter is Faraz Mirza.
Faraz Mirza.
Yes, I am allowing him to talk. Okay, he will be added.
All right. Okay, so his audio would be.
Faraz Mirza, can you hear me?
Yeah, right now I believe the audio is visible.
Yes, sir, extremely sorry from the technical team.
Okay.
We did not, I think there is an error from our side. We did not got your name. So you cannot switch on your live video, but you can just use your audio lines. So how you want to present, you can just proceed. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Enough for now, yeah. So
right now, I would want Tanisha to do the screencasting so that we can have the PPT there.
Cool. Okay.
To let you all know, they are from Ambedkar University, Delhi.
So I am a master's student from psychology in Ambedkar University. My partner is an undergraduate student from IGNU.
Yeah, I have completed my majors in clinical psychology. So we have done this research work together. So here we are presenting it. Yeah, you can present it first. Yeah, cool.
So, yeah. So we are presently engaged in a working study, which is a correlational study between the measure of cognitive flexibility and an exposure and interest in sci-fi.
So yeah, so in our abstract, the issues. First,
Sorry to interrupt. Faraz Mirza. Hello. Is disconnected.
Yeah. So anyways, I'll continue with the presentation.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. So cognitive flexibility in the past studies has been positively associated with the measure of creativity. Also, in the age of crisis, cognitive flexibility is a major cognitive construct that we are studying, because it enables adaptability and adjustment. There exists an individual difference between cognitive in cognitive flexibility and also the with which people adapt. So came out to be an important an important factor that contributes to adaptation.
Yes.
Also, sci-fi in the past studies has been positively associated with enhancing creativity.
Tanisha ma'am, Faraz Mirza is here. I have promoted him to panelist.
Okay, so
okay, now
thank you very much, sir.
Yes,
Sure, I have turned it on. So, yeah, thank you very much. So, I would like you to go to the issue section, because you know, when we actually got the notice the very research paper and regarding presenting this thing, so we saw that the next slide, please, Ms. Tanisha. Great. Are you there?
Sorry.
Yeah. So it was.
Hello. Didip.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now audio is working now.
হেৰি মিৰ্জাক পিছত মানে অলপমান কবলৈ দিও আমি তেখেতক আগত কবলৈ কৰে মানে জনে পেপাৰটো আৰম্ভ কৰিছিল তেখেতক কবলৈ দিও
হয় হয় হয়
তেতিয়ালে ভাল হয় নেকি
ওকে
আমি সেইটো ৰিকুৱেষ্ট কৰি চাও বস্তু নহলে খেলিমেলি হৈ যাব তাৰমানে
হয় হয় আপুনি ৰিকুৱেষ্ট কৰি চাওক
Yeah.
Mirza, can you do one thing? Let your partner present the paper, introduce the paper, and after midway, you can actually elaborate or discuss or whatever you want to do. Okay? Because you are actually beginning the paper.
Fine. Yeah, because it's like some internet issues happening, so let her do that. Fine.
Yes.
Continue. All right. So, sci-fi in the past studies in the literature review that we did, we found out that sci-fi has been repeatedly related, so correlated, even had been found to lead to enhanced creativity. However, the constructs of cognitive flexibility and sci-fi had never been associated in the past studies. So this is a working correlational study. We are still working on it. So so this was to relate the exposure and interest in sci-fi with the measure of cognitive flexibility. Right. So the definitions that we used to construct our measures and around which our study revolves are as follows. So science fiction, as we defined for our study, reads as a form of fiction that deals principally with the impact. With the impact of actual or imagined science upon society or individuals. However, most of the respondents could relate with the definition given by Christopher Evans in 1988, which reads as the crispiest definition of sci-fi is a literature of what if. So they were more drawn towards the area of possibility or imaginative side of sci-fi. Also, for the cognitive flexibility part, we took the definitions from Martin and Rubin's measure of cognitive flexibility test and the conception given in change questionnaire, and some from the test provided by Psychologia. This is a very pervasive psychology platform online. So we could actually make a better questionnaire vis-a-vis other available standardized questionnaires available that were standardized on the other on different cultures, not in India. So the definitions that we focused on were ability to give suitable reaction to the demands caused by changing situation, reluctance to lose to lose control. This measure was assessed in terms of how much tolerance people had in terms of ambivalence and ambiguity. The third major dimension that we assessed was awareness, having an awareness that in any given situation, there are alternatives and options available. And lastly, self-efficacy and being flexible, which means that they also have this awareness of them being efficient in being flexible, or whether their flexibility is perhaps practically possible for them. So we used two measures for testing. One was loosely based on Martin and Rubin measure of cognitive flexibility, given in 1995, and the other one we made it from scratch, all on our own. So yes, so this is an ongoing study. So every day the responses are increasing. So right now we have done an analysis on 77 participants in total, and out of which we found 65 relevant responses. Most of the people actually fell in the age group of 18 to 24, and mostly had postgraduate or undergraduate degree. Also, it's interesting to note that most of them had spent most of their lives in a city. Uh, yes. So about out of all the responses that we had analyzed, so far 36 participants, that is almost half, reported liking sci-fi to a great extent. However, more than half, at almost 70 degree, reported that they believe that science fiction, an exposure to science fiction actually leads to an understanding of science discipline a better understanding of science discipline. So this came out this was an important insight. Also, while some of the respondents blurred lines between sci-fi and fantasy genre, however, most of them seem to have an understanding what sci-fi is in the most acceptable definition what we have out there. Also, we had a weak negative correlation between liking sci-fi and believing it to be unrealistic. So people who tended to like sci-fi more also believed that sci-fi is not something that is unrealistic, fantastical, or bizarre. Also, even though half of the population agreed or accepted to liking sci-fi, but most of them had a movie or a book which impacted their lives or the way of behaving or thinking in a major way. Also, most of the people that we had assessed so far reported coming across sci-fi genre for the first time in their teenage. It's interesting to note how abstract thinking develops in teenage phase, and according to Piaget's developmental scheme, important as an important observation. Also, we asked why do people who like sci-fi, why do they like it? So most of the responses centered around the aspect of imaginative possibilities, imagination, and creativity and new perspectives that this genre offers.
And also, like, I would like to add to the very reason of people liking science fiction, which was when we come down to it, it comes down to the fact that they're able to visualize the concepts which have only been told to them and in a very blurry manner. And this very specific thing actually helped them to ultimately go dive deeper into the very genre of science fiction.
Yeah, so we used SPSS to analyze our data. Overall, we got a very weak positive correlation of 0.228. However, this might be not significant to draw an altogether regression analysis between these two variables. However, this is important enough to look forward to other latent variables that might be perhaps working between the two. Also, the questionnaire that we developed on our own had a better reliability scores. As you can see, we had done Cronbach's alpha. However, the test that we used to check to assess cognitive flexibility was standardized on a different cultural population. We loosely based, as I said before, we loosely based it on Rubin's and Martin's measure. So probably we could have a better test which assesses our population, India, which taps on Indian cultural elements better. So yeah, so also Gutman's reliability came to be better vis-a-vis Cronbach's, uh, which which probably means that it's not an ordinal data, and there are a lot of dimensions to it, but which we need to figure out in the coming days. So the future prospects of the study we have in mind is to develop a better mental flexibility report, self-report, and probably not much research has been done or um, tests have been developed in this area. Also, we need to do a factor analysis to understand if latent variables are playing roles. Also, if they are, which ones. Uh, some of the areas that we can switch to or future studies could take place are assessing the attribute or construct of creativity and an interest in sci-fi. The second could be an exposure to sci-fi and openness trait. Uh, Also, cognitive flexibility has been closely associated with cognitive rigidity. And in the past, sci-fi studies has been mostly associated with cognitive rigidity. That is how rigid thinking, conservative thinking or dogmatic thinking uh, is affected by an exposure or an interest in sci-fi. So this area could be looked upon in future. Also, a somewhat affiliated study could be done in understanding sci-fi impacts on formal education. The limitations of the study were we didn't have a very good mental flexibility self-report. Also, because of the lockdown, we couldn't really use other tests, other ways of collect other forms of data collection. For instance, we could have done certain hands-on tests. However, we could not do that. Um, Also in self-report, we used Google Forms. So we saw a lot of acquiescence, social desirability, and demand biases in our responses. Also, a lot of responding was disinterested. We had to cut down our number of responses to a huge extent. Um, Yes, also assessing backgrounds in STEM fields might be an important factor to look into while considering an interest in and exposure to sci-fi. It was found in the studies in the past that an active engagement in the narratives of sci-fi is actually what leads to an enhancement in creativity or perhaps any other cognitive construct. So that an active engagement in the narrative is something that needs to be assessed as well. So, right. So, yeah, that is it for now. Would you like to add something, Faraz?
Hello,
Hello?
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, finally, I've been at it again. Like,
Okay.
so yeah, I would just like to add to the fact that as we have been doing the researches on the very same topic, in Indian settings, not much stuff has been done for that. So I would like to thank the Damdama University people to finally like take up this topic and actually, you know, increase the awareness and incite people to do researches on that, like we were doing. Plus, as we see the current trend, we have just got the new education policy in which the government is talking about integration of science and the arts, and actually blur the lines between divisions of different streams of study. And we believe that after this research, especially because if we go back to the very same theme of the things which are actually necessary in a personality to develop creativity, in order to solve the issues of the society, we need science fiction so as a core part of the curriculum and as a major subject, so that we can develop those things in the children in the new educational policy in order to develop to reach a better post-humanistic society in a faster way. Definitely there are many ways, but as we are working on it, this is what we would like to see in the future. Yeah, that's all I can say for now.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanisha, for your paper. You talked about flexibility and rigidity as two of the paradigms. Would you suggest that flexibility is possible only when we interact with a machine, or is it possible when we interact with a machine in a proactive manner? We actually contribute to the process of what you call machine thinking?
Yeah.
I agree with your topic because if we take from the perspective of positive psychology and Martin Seligman's researches around it, so from the PERMA backgrounds, we see that definitely we can prepare individuals proactively to the issues which are likely to come in the future. And for that, like the exposure is the major thing, and machine interactions and everything is going up right now in the pandemic times, because like we are also having a webinar on Zoom only. So I believe it's gonna bring better futures for us.
What about the rural population? Most of these rural people, I mean, the majority of them don't have smartphones and all. So are we, trying to divide them from us, or kind of, isolating them from us? I mean, what would happen for them in the future if we
I
don't
believe
actually provide smartphones to them?
I believe like we are everyone along with the people who are capable of doing it, plus the governments, they are doing actions to bridge in the gap between the not so lucky and wealthy ones and the people who can actually afford it. You see that in the government schools right now, like as I can give the example of Delhi, every student in Pratibha Vikases and this thing School of Excellence have been provided tablets, and especially the ones who have scored better. So even if they are unable to afford, there is a system of government who is paid by our taxes to actually bridge this gap. So we are doing our efforts in order to bring a better thing. So yeah, and science fiction also, it widens the field view of knowledge of every individual, not depending upon from which background that individual ends up coming from. So it's actually beneficial for everyone as a whole, as a holistic society.
There's a difference between making objects of science fiction available, not science fiction, but the contents of science fiction, the technology, AI, machine learning to the people, the have-nots to the have-nots, and making concepts of these accessible to them. So I think we need to
But
figure
I
out.
think, Tanisha, there is something that you have to add. The kind of humanistic focus that we have been always giving emphasis upon, which is a result of the Enlightenment, movement in Europe. That man is the center of creation. We do everything around man, and we leave animals, we leave plants, we leave everything. And the Brazilian president, he shot off from the chair. He destroyed a whole rainforest. He just did something like out of the blue moon. Would you like to support those kind of an idea? I mean, kind of an urbanization where everything is possible?
Support the idea in which we see man as the central entity.
That's the problem of enlightenment. Now we have this very enlightened society. We call ourselves enlightened, and the result of this enlightenment is because we are getting all this kind of viruses, the melting of glaciers and everything. Now the urbanization means that we have locked ourselves. We don't have any friends. You have Facebook friends, we have Twitter friends. You don't have friends. Even if you walk around a person whom you know in the Facebook or Twitter, he'll just simply not recognize you.
Yes.
That's a pathetic situation we are in.
I would not like to. Yeah, I would not like to agree with your topic, because first of all, it's like when we talk about the friendships, then it depends which component are you including in the conception of friendship, which according to when we take Robert Sternberg, we get the concept of intimacy, which develops friendships. And it is not limited to only physical interactions. So I believe that it's about the level of intimacy people share, no matter which platform it is. And the other question which you took regarding
no, people had friendships even earlier also. Even the great theatrical movements, the great musical movements, the great philosophical movements, all were centered around coffee houses, walking on the streets and all that kind of things. But there was no Facebook and no Twitter and nothing of that kind of sort. I mean, I have a problem with that kind of an intimacy which is promoted by media and digital media especially. I have no problem with technologies and all those kind of things, but especially with social media, when they try to trigger off visuality, visuality is a problematic area. I mean, you want to make friendship maximum times, you want to make friendship with people who look good or who write good, but who might not be that good. I mean, this is a problem. I mean, I see people doing this kind of crazy stuff. So I have no problem with your paper. The paper is a good paper, but try to figure out if we are actually leaving a whole population behind us in a crazy, headway towards urbanization and globalization. The most of these ideas are actually imported from the West.
I would like to add one more point.
Interestingly, in our paper, a lot of respondents reported works from Indian artists like Koi Mil Gaya, Shaktiman. So the reading also certain comics from Indian culture. So I feel, well, a lot of reporting were indeed from the Western culture, the content, the material from the Western culture, but we had quite some responses which mentioned materials from our culture. So I feel that is something that's all about how much accessible or what we portray in the media and in the education perhaps.
Also, I'll be adding another point here that we are not saying that science fiction is only available to people via electronic devices or specific devices of that sort. Science fiction has always been a part of our culture, and it has been propagated via oratory cultures and oratory recitations and performances and arts and all that stuff. The main theme of science fiction comes down to the very same fact in which the technology which is available at that very moment and those realities of science are used to develop a future and help people see different realities which are possible, and they can also bring it about. Along with that, during the World War, I'd like, sorry,
please
Tanisha,
carry on.
you go.
So generally, when we define science fiction, generally the names of H.G. Wells, the creations of 1920, somewhere around 1920s, the American famous creations are quoted. However, if we really trace back, the earliest sci-fi creations were actually written in 17th century, like that. So they had science fiction based on their sense of science, which was some concepts were similar to us, like time travel, the coming of aliens. And they had written it on their manuscripts. They had stories. So yeah, science fiction is not something that we understand as like science fiction did become famous right now very much, but without the term itself, the science fiction was there, pretty much there.
Thank you, Danisha, for your responses, and Zafar also. You've been nice. Please develop your paper. We'd like to read it in the full, with all the inputs possibly you'll get from the people around you. Thank you. Tridip, we have come to an end, of course.
Yes, sir, we have come to an end, but there were certain questions to Rajat sir, but I think due to the opacity of the time, I have planned. Rajat sir, are you hearing me?
Please forward
Yes,
that to his mail. He'll write and type, and whatever he'll do, he'll forward that back to us also if possibly he can.
Yes, Rajat sir, I will mail you the questions in your email ID, and what you need to do, since those were our live viewers on YouTube,
yes,
so you have to answer those questions, write those questions in a MS Word or any format you like.
Okay,
Then
so
copy and paste it on the comment box of the YouTube video, our YouTube video, live video there.
Okay, you also do one thing, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have already written you my email ID, and you can also share that in YouTube.
Sure, that we can do.
Officially, you can share it so that they could write me whatever they feel like asking.
Okay, sure. Those were not that bad comments. Those were actually good comments for you, sir.
Were they angry with my paper?
No. You can view those very nice comments, and very resourceful comments. Actually, it will take more time to answer those because since those were also our esteemed viewers on YouTube, so we will not ignore any one of them.
No.
Okay, you have
Thank
to
you.
answer, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so Now we will issue another papers presenter certificate for Faraz Mirza also. I have noted his email ID. Then regarding I have got calls and messages regarding the feedback form. So actually the feedback form, we have not issued any feedback form this particular session or any of the paper presentation session. We have issued only feedback form for our general webinar session. So those who have submitted the feedback form duly will get their certificates. But we have received around 800 feedbacks. So we can only issue 100 certificates in a day. So you can divide the time and you will get how many days we will need. At least 1 week we need. But anyway, if any problem persists, contact. I have given my email ID. You can contact me. I will convey your message to our certificate coordinator. Then we will issue certificates to the participants of the general webinar, and we will issue certificates to our paper presenters who have presented their paper in this paper three sessions of the paper presentation. Then the last announcement is regarding I will request you to all the viewers on in YouTube and Zoom webinar platform, kindly subscribe to our YouTube official Damdama College Library channel so that you can get future updates regarding our upcoming webinars. And also I have given the link of Telegram in the chat box as well as YouTube live comment box. You will get there. Please subscribe to our Telegram official broadcast. So that's it. No more announcement from the technical team.
We have mementos and we have special recognition awards for people who are writing very good papers.
Yeah,
so I actually made an statement yesterday night in the webinar group that paper writers were going to write their papers and present their papers to us. Please note that we have 3 prizes. May not be monetary prizes, but some other form of prizes. So certificates and mementos you can expect from us for 3 best paper writers that we'll get, and we'll get it back to you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes. I think that's happy writing for us.
Now I'd like to ask Dr. Saurabh Sen Gupta, our convener, sir, and Dr. Shunja Sharma, sir, to present the vote of thanks.
Let our principal speak. He has been waiting for such a long time. We should not disturb him more.
No, first he will speak. After that, you present your vote of thanks, sir.
Yes. Let him speak. Let sir speak.
It is all due to the effort of our respected principal, sir. He has been from attending all the session live from last 11 a.m. to yesterday morning. So thank you, sir. You can just share your few words with the honorable panelists.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I wish to thank you all for successful completion of this 2-day national webinar on science fiction in an age of crisis. The IPC cell of Damdama College organized this webinar with a hope to explore the importance of science fiction now more than ever, as we are confronting a situation of changed world due to global COVID-19 pandemic. Two distinguished scholars, namely Dr. Topan Sharma, Dr. Girdhar Rao, and Dr. Dinesh Chandra Goswami, joined our webinar as resource persons of the webinar. I thank these scholars for their brilliant presentation. I thank these scholars for their brilliant presentation. All total 34 research scholars presented their papers in this webinar and placed their views in this forum. I wish to thank all these young paper presenters. From the discussions in 3 technical sessions and in the inaugural session, we were enlightened by information from different aspects of the topic. For example, science fiction literature helps in critical thinking. Science fiction promises new technology. A new world is promised with fantastic inventions. Science fiction literature helps in democratic brotherhood. Science fiction is acceptable as it has predictive power. Nowadays, people in intellectual talks discuss not only socio-economic matters, but also scientific invention. The resource persons gave the information about available literatures in different local languages like Assamese, Bengali, Marathi, etc. Science fiction is acceptable as it inspires scientists. Overall, this discussion expressed hope that human civilization will last forever. I also wish to thank conveners of this webinar, namely Dr. Saurabh Sengupta, Mr. Rajiv Monto, Dr. Bobita Kolita, and Mr. Teddy Borali for their endeavor for successful completion of this webinar. I also wish to thank all viewers of this webinar. Thank you. Thank you.
I think that would be okay, Tirip.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think that would be fine. Principal has said everything.
But then also, sir, it's a formal procedure to end with a vote of
Okay.
thanks.
We had a very nice and lively presentation through this webinar. We are very thankful to our principal for giving us a platform where we can actually exchange our ideas. This is a forum where we thought we would exchange our ideas, and we have been very, we have benefited from each other's views over a period of 2 days. I thank the experts who came to us and helped us with their ideas. Professor Tapan Kumar Sharma, the associate professor and physics scholar. Then we had Giridhar Rao from the Azim Premji University, and finally we had Dinesh Chandra Goswami. He's himself a writer. Then we had the paper presenters. I thank all the paper presenters also for the brilliant papers. Some of them were really very good and has pumped us very well. And we think that the next few days we'll have a nice platform where we can publish the papers. I request them to actually produce research papers where we can actually do something with those kind of researches. So there's a limit of 4,000 words to 5,000 words. You can actually extend that if you like in APA format. Because that's a format that we'd like to publish our papers. We'll have this peer reviewed through proper in a proper manner. So don't write your names and your institutional affiliation on the front page of your research paper. Just put it blank. And do that in a separate paper. Your name and affiliation should come in a separate paper. Submit this to us. We'll be having this publication somewhere before the pujas. So you have a time of a month or so to write a really good paper. So I'll request all of you to put your heads and hands together to write something that you really deserve and would like to publish. Well, I thank the principal, Dr. Shuranjan Sharma sir. He has been a pillar of strength for us. He has supported us all through our all silly mistakes and whatever we did. I would like to thank our conveners, co-conveners, Rajiv Bahanto, Professor Rajiv Bahanto, and Mrs. Bobita Kolita, librarian of our college, who has been also very instrumental and very inspirational in whatever we did. And finally, Trilip Borali, our ITC coordinator, has worked day in and day out to make this program a success. He's been the technical brain behind everything that we have done. There are other two people we'd like to mention. One is Kartik Pathak. He is from the Department of Assamese, and he has also circulated the papers. He has also worked very hard in making this program a success. In fine, I'll say that we have all enjoyed the experience of being together. We'll all enjoy the experience if possible, if there is a possibility for us in the future. I thank you all and wish you the very best for your research, for the very best of your activities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for delivering your vote of thanks. And we hope that we'll meet again in the upcoming webinars.
Yes.
At least if the topic or the themes are different, at least we can attend and we can remain connected. At last, I would like to mention again, subscribe our channel to stay connected and updated, as well as our Telegram official broadcast. Thank you. I am ending the meeting from here. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rajat sir. Thank you, Parvati, Shilpa Anand, Neha Jain, Lakshmi, Mitabrata Goswami, Faraz Mirza. Sorry, there was some technical issue with you, and Gaurav Kumar sir. Thank you. Thank you, Principal
Gaurav is
sir.
very young and very, full of life.
Okay. Okay. Rajat sir, thank you. Please leave the room. Paper presenters, kindly leave the room.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, YouTube viewers. Still, people are watching you all. You will get the links. The paper presenter will get the links of all the recorded videos over YouTube. So they are watching you all. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I am disconnecting the paper presenters.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I am stopping.